Chapter 31:10. How could they not be afraid of Dmo Xian, this mysterious and powerful existence? But they could only use their words to boost their courage and brainwash themselves. Only in this way could they not escape from stage fright. Most importantly, they still had Nether Palace's secret weapon, so they had nothing to be afraid of. Even if it was the Overlord. In front of Nether Palace's secret weapon, they would definitely be defeated. Nether Palace's disciples' morale had indeed risen greatly amidst their curses. Xiangsheng Fa squinted his eyes as he rubbed his chin. He wanted to see what kind of ability this Yiqing Luo, who was mentioned by the other saint techniques several times and even the higher-ups in Nether Palace were paying close attention to, had. Yiqing Luo really thought that with the Overlord's support, she could rely on the Overlord to deal with thousands of troops and horses? So what if the Overlord could really fight 1 against 1,000? He could continue to summon the magical beasts. He could continue to send that bunch of cannon fodder to their deaths. He could continue to make use of the undead puppets to attack Valley Wind City. So what if Dmo Xian was powerful? Facing this kind of continuous war, how long could he last? Xiangsheng Fa scoffed lightly as his eyes were filled with disdain. Everyone in Nether Palace laughed when they saw Xiangsheng Fa. They understood that their curses and ridicule towards Dmo Xian made leader Xiang extremely happy. Hence they took a deep breath and suppressed the fear towards Dmo Xian as they started cursing once again. What Overlord? The Imperial Palace that had been established for so many years was overtaken by the Palace of Darkness in just a few months. You can't even protect the Imperial Palace that belongs to you. And you still have the nerve to let others call you Lord Dizun? I think you're just a dog. Nether Palace is the #1 palace in Nirvana Realm. The Imperial Palace will soon follow that bullshit Overlord. Overlord? Pui. Do you really think you're somebody? Every time the people from the Palace of Darkness who were cursing opened their mouths to say a few words, they would feel a huge impact on their faces. Following that, their faces felt as if they had been slapped hard in the face. They spat out mouthfuls of blood, and even their teeth fell out. Everyone from the Palace of Gloomy Darkness was in so much pain that their eyes were burning. They glared in the direction of the attack. Yiqing Luo waved the glower flame fan. The coquettish red glow flickered continuously. Every time it flashed, one could clearly see a streak of light darting out. He only headed in the direction of the people from the Palace of Darkness. It hurts. Help. More cries of pain, and cries for help rang out. His speed was fast and his strength was ruthless. It caused the rage of the people from the Dark Abyss Palace to extinguish. Yiqing Luo sneered. Her fingertips moved and the glower flame fan opened up. In the air, ripples spread out one after another. Powerful energy gushed out from his body. It charged in the direction of the people from the Dark Abyss Palace, like a tidal wave that covered them. Another wave of screams, and the sound of tall and burly magical beasts falling to the ground resounded. Yiqing Luo slowly kept her glower flame fan. She squinted her long and narrow eyes, reflecting an icy cold light. Bit by bit, she looked at the disciples of the Palace of Darkness who were screaming and covering their faces. Her voice was as cold as ice. Chapter 31:11. Yiqing Luo stood in front of Dmo Xian as she slowly retracted her arm and raised her chin as her face was icy cold. The glower flame fan on her fingertips swayed gently. Everyone from the secluded palace spat out blood as their teeth flew out as they cried out in pain. Then, he looked at the flame-like red light that moved from time to time. They felt that their faces were in even more pain, and so were their teeth. Yiqing Luo's cold eyes swept past that group of people, and on seeing their terrified expressions, her pink lips curled upwards slightly. She couldn't even bear to bully her boyfriend. This bunch of trash were even fit to insult her man? You bunch of trash. Why are you afraid of a young lass like her? Attack for me. Kill them. Take down Valley Wind City. Xiangsheng Fa saw that the situation had turned around and his face turned green as he gritted his teeth and bellowed. The secluded palace's disciples clenched their weapons tightly as they wanted to charge forward. But the moment they met Yiqing Luo's smiling gaze, and the red profound glow in her hands, their legs turned into jelly. Their faces hurt and their teeth hurt even more. A bunch of trash. Just a young lass taking the chance to sneak an attack, and all of you are so scared. Do you still look like Secluded Palace's disciples? If you don't want to stay in Secluded Palace and are afraid of death, then scram for me now. Secluded Palace doesn't need you bunch of cowardly trash. Xiangsheng Fa unleashed his profound energy as his voice echoed throughout the battlefield. Secluded Palace's disciples exchanged glances as they tried to find an answer from each other's eyes. The main reason why they joined Secluded Palace. Not only because Secluded Palace's benefits were good. Most importantly, it was because Secluded Palace had the fastest way to raise their profound energy in the shortest time possible. This increase in profound energy was permanent. Towards their thirst for power, how could they bear to leave? Moreover, Secluded Palace's development was obviously much more awesome than the Imperial Palace. They followed Secluded Palace to conquer the world. In the future, they would be the #1 palace's disciples. Just walking on the road would bring along the wind. Most importantly, after they joined Secluded Palace, they had done so many atrocious things. If he lost the protection of the Abyss Palace, they would definitely be captured by those small powers that the dark Secluded Palace had wiped out and used as tools to vent their anger. Kill. Capture Valley Wind City. Let the people of the Imperial Palace see the power of our palace of gloomy darkness. Yes. Kill. We have a secret weapon. Why should we be afraid of them? She was just a silly little girl. Charge. Capture Valley Wind City and capture the people of the Imperial Palace alive. The Palace of Darkness disciples didn't want to be abandoned by the Palace of Darkness and were anxious to prove themselves. Looking at the human wave tactic which was used once again, as a group of magical beasts and Secluded Darkness Palace's disciples flocked towards them, Yiqing Luo's lips twitched in disdain as she sneered. It just so happens that I'm done warming up. Now I can seriously loosen my muscles and bones. Yiqing Luo twisted her neck, waved her glower flame fan, and was about to step forward. All of a sudden, an arm crossed her waist and pulled her into his embrace. Ah Xian! Yiqing Luo fell into his arms and glanced sideways at him. What's the matter? Dmo Xian didn't reply her. Instead he held her waist as his vision shot towards the other corner of the city wall as his voice was deep and calm. How much longer do you guys intend to watch the show for? You guys? Yiqing Luo was stunned. Chapter 31:12. Io Overlord, can't you let us watch a little longer? Aren't we doing this to let Qing Luo stretch her muscles and bones? Why did you call us out so early? 10 over figures walked out from the corner of the city walls. Those 10 over students were dressed in green and white robes, and on the left chest area, there was an eye-catching Xian word embroidered with gold thread. When Yiqing Luo's vision met them, her eyes instantly lit up. Xiao Yi Jin Zi Shadow Xiao Yi Ruopan, why are you all here? These 10 over people in front of her. Weren't they Heavenly Academy, Devil Classes students? Ever since she left the West Continent to search for the goo poison for Long Yin Zhan. Other than Yan Xiao Yi and Xiao Jin, she had not seen those brothers in Devil Class for a long time. Madame Qing Luo. Qing Luo. The few of them in Devil Class all rushed forward. Yiqing Luo patted Dmo Xian's hand which was on her waist. Feeling the man intentionally increasing his strength, he tightened his grip on her waist before releasing her. This little act of throwing a tantrum made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh out loud. She held onto Dmo Xian's arm which was about to retract. She turned around, stood on her tiptoes and planted a soothing kiss on his chin. Following that, she then released Dmo Xian and jogged towards the direction of her brothers. We haven't met for such a long time and Madame Qing Luo is showing off her affection the minute she sees us. Enai Ruopan hugged Yiqing Luo as his tone was filled with excitement and joy. Yiqing Luo smiled as she hugged everyone. Her brows were filled with smiles. Those people from Secluded Palace who were launching their attacks were all stunned on the spot because of the sudden appearance of 10 over people, until those 10 over people seemed as though they didn't notice the danger in front of them, as they were still smiling happily. Everyone from Secluded Palace then regained their senses. You bunch of brats, are you looking down on our Secluded Palace? Ptaha. I thought it was the Imperial Palace's reinforcements. I didn't expect. It's just a bunch of kids who haven't even grown out their hair. Did you think this is a house or a game? You bunch of students who have yet to graduate, running onto the battlefield, are you looking to die? The people of Gloomy Palace and the others were already filled with resentment. These people were obviously the students of the Heavenly Academy. Each of them looked to be about 16 or 17 years old. But just as they were about to attack aggressively, Yi Zichen suddenly stopped, completely ignoring their existence. This was simply looking down on them. The people from Gloomy Palace didn't hesitate and rushed up. Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she looked at the people from Secluded Darkness Palace who were charging towards her, as she gave a smile which didn't look like a smile. Brothers, looks like now isn't the time to reminisce about the past. Everyone in Devil class turned their faces towards the front. It's been a long time since we last met. Let me see your recent growth. The corners of Yi Qingluo's lips curled up as she smiled devilishly. As long as I see progress, I will reward you. Reward. Everyone's eyes lit up. Rewards and whatnot, especially Yi Qingluo's reward, that was absolutely helpful to them. As a result, a group of released animals. He had completely released his nature. Howling, he picked up his weapon and rushed forward. Chapter 31:13. Dmo Xian raised his brows as he looked at the young lady's smiling face. His lips curled as he stretched out his hand and held her little hand. Let's go. Dmo Xian and Yi Qingluo also rushed up to join the battle. Ah Feng, Ah Yu and Ah Lei, the three guardians, also rushed up to protect their master. Really don't. The Grand General wanted to persuade Yi Qingluo and the rest to wait for the reinforcements. But in front of him, that group of people were already entangled with the people from Nether Palace. The Grand General's brows creased tightly as he stared anxiously at those 10 over people. His heart was filled with worry and conflict. Initially, there was only the Overlord and the other 5 to go against the thousands of troops from Nether Palace, and those 10 over undefeatable undead puppets. They were already very worried. Later on, they added another 10 over people. But those 10 over people were all young lads and young ladies. They looked like 16 to 17 years old. These young lads, could they really hang on till the reinforcements arrived? Move aside. Suddenly an icy cold voice was heard from his back. That voice was like ice as it penetrated into his eardrums. It was so cold that the Grand General shivered. Master, you can't go over. The Grand General turned his head back and saw the red-robed young man walking towards the direction of the battlefield. He remembered Yi Qingluo's instructions as he hurriedly stretched out his hand to stop him. Zhu Wu Xian's brows creased slightly as his eyes were filled with a sliver of anger. Move aside. Master, have you forgotten what Miss Yi said? You can't go over. The Grand General was shocked by his gaze as he broke out in cold sweat. But he still braced himself to stop him. Zhu Wu Xian was preparing to take a step and pass the Grand General. Just when he heard this sentence, his footsteps slowly shifted back. Although the Grand General was adept in leading troops into battles, but to be able to sit in this position and have a bunch of trusted soldiers, naturally he wasn't someone who didn't know how to read people's expressions. His gaze shot towards the direction of the battlefield, and quickly looked at Zhu Wu Xian as he roughly understood something. He continued to brace himself. Master, Miss Yi asked you to stay here because she's worried about you. If you insist on going over, Miss Yi might be distracted because she's worried about you. On the battlefield, once you're distracted, there's a possibility of getting injured. Zhu Wu Xian's eyes instantly froze. The expression on his face became darker and more terrifying. However, he was no longer in the mood to go back to the battlefield. Instead, he clenched his fists and returned to his previous position. The general wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and heaved a sigh of relief. Zhu Wu Xian's face was cold, and his eyes seemed to be covered in a layer of frost as he stared at the battlefield. It was a figure dressed in a fiery red robe. Beside the young lady, Dmo Xian did not leave her by a single step. Every time he defeated the enemy in front of him, the two of them would look at each other and smile. This scene made Zhu Wuxin feel the sharp pain of his heart being cut by a sharp blade again. He pressed a hand to his heart. The cold eyes that stared at Yi Qingluo's direction became colder and colder. Ever since the end of the God class's training, the brothers of the Devil class had not experienced a hearty battle. even if he occasionally left the academy to accept missions from mercenary groups. They all felt that they had not enjoyed themselves to the fullest. Now they were facing a large group of magical beasts, flying beasts, disciples of the Dark Palace. They were like animals that were starving and thirsty. They totally didn't need to care about their lives or anything. Each and every one of them killed to their heart's content. Just 10 over Devil class students, plus 3 Imperial Palace Guardians. Chapter 31:14. Not to mention that Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo had also made their moves, under the hands of a bunch of animals. Even if the secluded palace had thousands of men and horses, they had all turned into animals to prove their own growth. In Yiqing Luo's words, that was leveling up experience. The secluded palace's disciples had their morale plummeted after being brutally beaten by the animals. One by one, they wailed and ran away. How would they dare to fight against that bunch of animals? Xiangsheng Fa was also stunned by this scene. No one had expected this. Just a dozen of young men, and they were able to carve out a bloody path in the hands of countless beasts and secluded palace's disciples. No, it wasn't just a bloody path. It was a massacre on the secluded palace's side. Xiangsheng Fa's expression congealed as his eyes were filled with murderous intent. He glanced at the undead puppets behind him, and looked at the flying beasts and magical beasts which had already been killed by 2/3. Xiangsheng Fa, where are you looking at? Suddenly, he heard a young lady's mocking voice. Xiangsheng Fa felt a chilly wind rushing towards him. He swiftly took a step back. Bam! His face seemed to have crashed into a barrier. The sound of the crash was extremely crisp. It was like a slap on his face. Tisk, is Holy Art Elephant trying to beg for mercy from me? The young girl beside him laughed mockingly. Xiangsheng Fa turned his head and saw the young lady waving her palm and smiling at him. Her eyes were filled with ridicule. Xiangsheng Fa covered his face. His expression turned extremely ugly. What could be more shameful than being slapped in the face without even knowing it? The speed of the slap was so fast, and the presence was concealed so well. He didn't even notice that Yiqing Luo was already close to him. Xiangsheng Fa's gaze was sinister, as though he wanted to strangle Yiqing Luo to death. Facing such a gaze, Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she laughed lightly. Why is Xiangsheng Fa showing such a shocked expression? Could it be that the slap just now wasn't for me to slap you, but because you accidentally bumped into my palm? As she said that, she blinked innocently. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered. This made the young girl's gorgeous face look even more pure and harmless. The look in Xiangsheng Fa's eyes grew fiercer. Yiqing Luo giggled as she leaned slightly towards his direction. Xiangsheng Fa subconsciously took a step back. Yiqing Luo smiled even more charmingly. Xiangsheng Fa, don't be angry after all. I am also a headache for those few brothers of yours. You should at least give me some face. Don't think that I am so weak. She giggled. The brighter the smile. Xiangsheng Fa's face darkened. Yiqing Luo was very satisfied with the expression of Saint Law at this moment. She smiled brightly. It was so bright that it almost hurt Sacred Law Elephant's eyes. That was the moment Xiangsheng closed his eyes. Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand, and her 5 fingers quickly grabbed Great Elephant Saint Technique's collar. Then he moved his fingers. A silver thread was released from the ghastly flame fan, and quickly wrapped around the Elephant Saint Technique. Xiangsheng Fa only felt a piercing pain on his skin as he opened his eyes with a gasp of cold air. He saw that the robe on his arms had been cut by the sharp silver thread. The silver thread, which was as fine as a strand of hair, stuck to his arm. It was a cold touch, mixed with the piercing pain of the silver thread cutting his skin. Chapter 31:15. Don't worry, I will go easy on you. Yiqing Luo smiled evilly. I have no choice. To catch the ringleader first, I can only catch you first. Xiangsheng Fa's handsome face was extremely gloomy. His eyes turned cold as a cold glint appeared. Originally, I wanted to let you die a little easier. He opened his mouth and his voice was filled with uncontrollable anger and coldness. Since you insist on seeking death, then don't blame me for not knowing how to have tender feelings for the fairer sex. Just as his voice fell, Yiqing Luo felt a gust of yin qi bursting out from Xiangsheng Fa's body. Immediately, The surrounding air was condensed with a layer of frosty air. Yi Qingluo's pupils widened as she swiftly loosened her grip on Xiangxing Fa. Following that, her figure was like an afterimage as she retreated swiftly. Bam! A deafening explosion was heard from the place where Yi Qingluo was standing earlier. After she stabilized her footsteps, she squinted her eyes as she looked at the lingering qi in the sky. There was a slight change in her expression. Earlier, if she was one step slower, there was a possibility she would have been hit directly on the top of her head by that explosion. But luckily, at the moment she retreated, the glower flame fan swiftly closed up and fastened the silver thread tightly. She retracted the silver thread in her hand, trying to pull Xiangxing Fa back. But this pull, the silver thread was easily pulled over. The other end of the silver thread was empty. Where was Xiangxing Fa? Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered as she quickly kept the silver thread back into the glower flame fan. Then she released her perception as she looked towards the direction of the qi flow alertly. Xiangxing Fa actually broke free from the restraint of her silver thread. She had just kept the silver thread, and was still shocked that Xiangxing Fa broke free from the silver thread. Suddenly, her ears twitched sensitively. Her eyes stared intently at the direction of Xiangxing Fa. Why did it seem like she heard a very messy sound, and it was mixed with an extremely strong murderous intent, and the yin qi was getting heavier and heavier, and a very pungent and unpleasant smell. What was going on? Yi Qingluo, you and your bunch of useless brothers will not be able to return. Xiangxing Fa roared furiously in the midst of the qi flow. The strong qi gradually dissipated. Everything in front of him became much clearer. When Yi Qingluo saw this scene, she finally understood the reason why she had so many strange feelings just now. Dozens of undead puppets stood in front of Xiangxing Fa. Behind Xiangxing Fa were dozens of neatly lined corpse puppets. The pungent smell came from the undead corpse puppets. It smelled like rotting corpses. It also smelled like some kind of potion. The stench was indescribable. An endless amount of yin qi was emitted from the corpse puppet's body. It's a monster, a monster. The Palace of Darkness is going to use monsters. Be careful. These people were all monsters. They are all monsters. On the city wall, the soldiers who had been paying attention to the situation shouted at the top of their lungs when they saw the undead corpse puppets surrounding the elephant saint technique. After Yi Qingluo saw those dead corpse puppets, her expression turned grave. From the moment the Palace of Darkness disciples controlled the beasts to attack Valley Wind City, these nearly 50 dead corpse puppets were just standing not far away from Xiangxing Fa, like a decoration of the terracotta army. Apparently, Xiangxing Fa had no intention to control the dead corpse puppets to attack Valley Wind Sect right from the start. Chapter 31:16. If right from the start, Xiangxing Fa had let the undead puppets join the battle, the Palace of Darkness's loss might not be that huge. Undead puppets were Palace of Darkness's tools. Xiangxing Fa probably wouldn't be willing to use Palace of Darkness's tools to attack her, unless these were Palace of Darkness's tools, which affected him. So he didn't let the undead puppets deal with them. Now he had no choice but to control the undead puppets to protect him. That meant to say, to control the undead puppets, there was a certain price to pay. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes slightly as she sized up Xiangxing Fa from top to bottom. But no matter how she looked, she couldn't tell what was different about Xiangxing Fa. These are the undead puppets you were talking about? Enai Rupan stared blankly at the stiff corpses that were standing straight, and asked in astonishment. After Yen Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin returned to the Heavenly Academy, then they told Devil Class about the Miao Tribe's matter. Towards the undead puppets, Devil Class's students felt that it was a novelty. Looks like it's not as powerful as imagined. Lu Xiaoyu tilted her head as she blinked her eyes, staring at those undead puppets. Devil Class's students nodded their heads in agreement. Don't let your guard down. Their terror is not in their outer appearance, but they are impenetrable, impervious to fire and water. Even if their forelimbs are chopped off, they will still be able to continue fighting. Xiao Jin reminded in a deep voice. So if you meet them, you must be careful. Yes. Devil classes students replied in unison as they concentrated their attention and looked towards the direction of the undead puppets. It's out! It's out! Palace of Darkness's strongest weapon is out. An invincible and all-conquering weapon. Palace of Darkness will definitely win this time round without any pressure. Palace of Darkness's disciples who were still alive saw the undead puppets being activated. The terror and fear on their faces were all replaced by ecstasy. Xiang Xingfa sneered. He opened his arms wide. Insolent laughter. As though he had completely forgotten about the awkwardness of being caught by Yi Qingluo earlier. His sinister eyes stared deadly at Yi Qingluo. The corner of his mouth was still curled up in his symbolic smirk. Yi Qingluo, it's not too late to beg for mercy. His sinister smile was so cold that it made people shiver. Especially those 10 over corpses surrounding him. Upon hearing his voice, all of them started to move in unison towards Yi Qingluo's direction. The dozens of corpse puppets moved in unison, as if they were duplicates. There were no flaws at all. Devil classes 10 over students, after forcing the wave of magical beasts to retreat, speedily crowded towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Because of the corpse puppets, the disciples of Secluded Darkness Palace shouted excitedly. For a while, no one continued to attack. In their eyes, once the corpse puppets were dispatched, those little brats who haven't even grown their hair will all become corpses. Qingluo, what should we do? It's this group of monsters again. Yan Xiaoyi gripped the black sickle blade tightly, her expression solemn. Yi Qingluo's lips curled. Don't panic, let them continue showing off. When they think that they're standing at the peak, let them fall into hell, that's more interesting. You have a way to deal with this group of monsters? Xiao Jin understood the meaning in her words. Yan Xiaoyi's eyes shone. That's right, isn't the Overlord able to hang this group of monsters up in minutes? If he makes a move, there's basically no problem. Chapter 31:17. What? Us. Yan Xiaoyi's eyes widened as she suddenly took a step back. You must be joking. How could we possibly be that bunch of monsters' opponents? The 10 over devil class students looked at the corpse puppets, and then looked at Yi Qingluo. After hesitating for a moment, Lu Xiaoyu pursed her lips and opened her mouth. I can try. The other 10 over students exchanged glances and immediately looked at Yi Qingluo resolutely. We're willing to go. The few of you haven't seen with your own eyes how powerful the corpse puppets are, and don't know what's so perverted about them. Yan Xiaoyi pressed her forehead as her head ached. Our strength totally can't hurt the corpse puppets. She waved her own black sickle blade and added another sentence. Even my black sickle blade has no way to hurt the corpse puppets. Devil classes few people looked at each other again. They clenched their fists tightly, and although their expressions were slightly moved by Yan Xiaoyi's words, but they still licked their lips as they firmly shook their heads. Lu Xiaoyu held Yan Xiaoyi's hand as she gave her a mischievous smile. We indeed don't know how powerful the corpse puppets are, but we believe in Qingluo. Right, we believe in Qingluo, madam. Devil classes students all spoke in unison. Yan Xiaoyi was stunned as she immediately shut her eyes. I'm used to Qingluo being able to create miracles on her own, but I forgot that she can also make the people around her to create miracles. Alright, don't think so much. Qingluo naturally has her reasons for asking us to go up. Lu Xiaoyu hooked Yan Xiaoyi's shoulder. But later on, we still need you to take the lead. After all, this is our first time crossing hands with this bunch of monsters. Yan Xiaoyi. Comforting her. Was she planning on this? Looking at the 10 over devil classes students bustling with noise and laughter, Yi Qingluo's lips unknowingly curled into an arc. The feeling of having such a group of brothers by her side was really good. Their unconditional trust in her also made her feel exceptionally warm. She smiled till her eyes were curved as her eyes were filled with warmth. Suddenly, a warm aura enveloped her from behind. Her delicate body was pulled into a broad chest. Yi Qingluo shut her eyes as she leaned on his body. Xian, the brothers trust me so much so. Those dead corpses, you can't lay your hands on them. Didn't you ask me to keep a close eye on the corpse puppets? Xian chuckled beside her ear. Yi Qingluo turned around and hugged his waist, Her little head rubbed against his chest. Previously, I didn't know that all the brothers were here, so I wanted to end the battle quickly. She rubbed against him and raised her little chin, beaming as she looked into Dmo Xian's eyes. I miss the feeling of fighting with my brothers. I can also use them as an experiment. Dmo Xian raised his hand and caressed her hair. I can't do anything to you. His tone was filled with love, their brotherhood, and the warmth of pink bubbles. It was a blatant slap in the face of the people from the Palace of Darkness. It had come to this. How could they still be in the mood to talk about brotherhood and love? Did they really not put the Palace of Darkness in their eyes? They really didn't understand how powerful their Palace of Darkness's secret weapon was. Xiang Shengfe also felt waves of pain on his face. Chapter 31:18. Heavy Reward. These two words caused an uproar among the Palace of Darkness's disciples. Palace of Darkness's heavy reward was to give them a chance to raise their profound energy quickly. Once they got this heavy reward, in the Palace of Darkness where ability spoke, they would be able to get a good official position. Humans' greed was more important than anything else. In front of greed, fear and terror could be thrown to the back of one's mind, because if they won the bet, what was waiting for them was a glorious future. No one was willing to be below others. Everyone wanted to stand out and stand at the highest point. Palace of Darkness's disciples, under the thirst for power, their eyes were burning with a burning battle intent. I will not let you down. Go. Kill this bunch of brats who don't know their place. Palace of Darkness's disciples, on seeing the corpse puppets speedily charging towards Yi Qing Luo and the others' direction, also speedily attacked. In their eyes, Yi Qing Luo and the others had become the stepping stone to raise their ability. Momentarily, the sword light and shadow, magical beasts howled. The corpse puppets swept up a raging yin qi as they charged over. It was a ferocious attack. Under the city wall, those 10 over youngsters stood on the same spot, without any intention to evade. Oh no! Oh no! The great general on the city wall, nervously clutching the long spear in his hand, as he paced around anxiously. Why haven't the reinforcements arrived yet? If something really happens to them, how am I going to answer to Sovereign? How am I going to answer to the Imperial Palace? The great general heard the deafening rumbling explosion below the city wall. All the muscles in his body tensed up at this moment. He shut his eyes tightly, as his mouth kept mumbling something. However, after the second explosion, Li Tianlan's body trembled. The great general finally couldn't take it anymore, as his eyes widened, as he raised the long spear in his hand. No way! How can I be like a good-for-nothing, holed up here, being protected by a bunch of kids? This is Three Springs City, it's my turf, I should protect it personally. The great general was so anxious that he burst out vulgarities. He dashed towards the city wall, as he was about to jump down. Brothers, let's protect us. His words were suddenly stuck in his throat. The great general's vision was fixated on the scene below the city wall. He couldn't believe his eyes. She is a very special woman. Suddenly, the youth's cold voice came from behind. However, there was a hint of amusement in his voice. Don't look at her like you look at an ordinary person. As long as she says it, she'll definitely be able to do it, the young man continued. The general turned around in a daze. He looked at Zhu Wuxin, who had a cold expression and a frosty look on his face. Zhu Wuxin's gaze was fixed on the beautiful figure below the city wall. There was an obvious tenderness in her eyes. The general turned his head in a daze and looked down at the city wall again. He had to acknowledge Zhu Wuxin's words. Really, one couldn't use ordinary people's eyes to look at Yi Qing Luo. Perhaps relying on these kids, Goofing City could really be saved. Below the city wall, the disciples of the Palace of Darkness and the monsters seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall. They had no way to get within 5 steps of Yi Qing Luo and the others. Each time the Dark Nether Palace disciples, or the corpses and puppets wanted to charge over, they would be bounced back by the invisible wall. Chapter 31:19. The secluded palace's disciples who were repelled were dismembered into pieces, leaving only splattering blood on the ground. As for the corpse puppets, in the shortest time possible, They attacked once again with their broken bodies. But no matter how they charged over, that invisible wall had surrounded Yiqing Luo and the others from all directions, tightly and solidly. After 2 waves of attacks, Xiangsheng Fa knew that this was a futile effort, letting that bunch of trash from the secluded palace die in vain. He raised his hand and stopped the 3rd wave of attacks from the secluded palace's disciples. His face was still as suave as before, but the deep meaning in his eyes was filled with a sinister and treacherous glint. His eyes were fixed on the golden boy and jade girl who were hugging each other. What? Overlord, are you afraid of our secluded palace's secret weapon? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her lips curled evilly. Secret weapon? It can't even break my Xian's barrier. How can it be called a secret weapon? Conjuring a barrier requires a huge amount of mental power. Xiangsheng Fa's face was gloomy as he spoke in a sinister tone. We can take a good look to see if the Overlord's mental power is higher, or if our secluded palace's secret weapon has more endurance. Following that, he waved his arm. Secluded palace's disciples retreat. The corpse puppets continue to attack. Hearing Xiangsheng Fa's words, Yiqing Luo's expression had a slight change. Her lips were curled into a smile, but a sliver of worry flashed past her eyes. Apparently, Xiangsheng Fa's intention was to control the corpse puppets and use them to attack the barrier. No matter how strong Dmo Xian's mental power was, it couldn't be compared to the corpse puppets, which didn't know fatigue and couldn't die. When Dmo Xian's mental power was exhausted, Dmo Xian would definitely fall into a short period of weakness. By then, not only could he make use of the corpse puppets to capture the few of them in one fell swoop, at the same time he could also capture Dmo Xian alive. Xiangsheng Fa had a good plan. Yiqing Luo's fingers on Dmo Xian's arm tightened slightly. She couldn't let Xiangsheng Fa have his way. Xiangsheng Fa's retreat order made the secluded palace's disciples extremely hesitant. Naturally, they were unwilling to retreat. The only way to obtain a handsome reward was to cooperate with the undead corpse puppets and take the heads. If he retreated, the undead puppets broke through the barrier. What if they couldn't make it in time to get the kill? TSK, it's really hard to raise a dog that isn't raised by oneself. Yiqing Luo gave a ridiculing smile. Xiangsheng Fa, look at your position in secluded darkness palace. I really feel pity for you. You can't even order these little disciples around. Xiangsheng Fa's face turned pale. The expressions of the disciples of the Palace of Darkness turned extremely ugly. No, don't listen to this demonist nonsense. We are absolutely loyal to our captain. Demonist, don't try to sow discord between us and Captain Elephant. Although that was what the disciples of the Palace of Darkness said, they still squeezed to the front. None of them had the intention to retreat. Xiangsheng Fa's face turned even uglier. One more word and this leader will let you break Dmo Xian's barrier. The disciples of the secluded darkness palace turned pale with fright. The first 2 waves of disciples who attacked the barrier had all turned into a pool of blood. Not even a piece of flesh was left. All of you get back here. Xiangsheng Fa bellowed once again. They could hear the rage in Xiangsheng Fa's tone. Chapter 31:20. Xiangsheng Fa was so infuriated that he couldn't wait to kill Yiqing Luo and the rest. He didn't wait for the secluded palace's disciples to retreat to a safe zone as he directly controlled the puppets and charged over. And at this moment, just as Xiangsheng Fa thought that Yiqing Luo and the rest were still hiding in the array barrier, but he saw Yiqing Luo pulling away Dmo Xian's hand on her waist as she took a step forward. The young lady's lips curled upwards, revealing an evil smile which made Xiangsheng Fa feel uneasy. What was she trying to do? Why did she look so confident? What was she plotting? Could this array barrier be a smokescreen? Countless guesses flashed through Xiangsheng Fa's mind. His heart inexplicably started to beat wildly with unease. Very quickly, Xiangsheng Fa got his answer. The young lady's gaze was like a torch as it penetrated through the array barrier and the puppet's obstruction. As it fixed on him, she raised her brows as she gave a faint smile. The glint in her eyes seemed to be mocking his ignorance. Following that, he heard the young lady's sweet voice. "Brothers, I'm very satisfied with your improvement." The young lady smiled faintly. These words were obviously meant for the devil class students behind her. However, her eyes were still fixed on him. Xiangsheng Fa felt as though he was entangled by an icy cold poisonous snake. The kind that he couldn't avoid even if he wanted to. The reward that I promised you, take it well. The moment the young lady finished her words, she suddenly raised her hand. The ring with the red phoenix totem flashed brightly. Over 10 weapons were suspended in the air. Yi Qingluo's palm moved, and the weapons quickly moved towards the brothers behind her. Those weapons were knives, swords, whips, and spears. These were the weapons that the brothers were used to. They raised their hands and caught the weapons in front of them. Lu Xiaoyu's eyes shone as she waved the long sword in her hand. This weapon, don't tell me you personally refined it? And Ruopen also held the long sword tightly. Madame Qingluo personally refined this weapon? I will definitely keep it well. The other students in Devil class also had their eyes sparkling brightly. That look of a crazy fangirl. It made Yi Qingluo's forehead drip with cold sweat. I didn't refine this. She coughed softly. It was refined by Tang Beiyuan, the hall master of the Imperial Palace's refining hall. I was just an assistant. Everyone's eyes sparkled as they cupped their fists in Tang Beiyuan's direction. Thank you, Hall Master Tang. No need, no need. These are all ideas provided by your Qingluo. As long as it's of help to you, that's good enough. Tang Beiyuan had never been thanked in such a serious manner. She felt a little unnatural and smiled awkwardly. Madame Qingluo's idea? What kind of help? The few of them scratched their heads in confusion. A good weapon is helpful to all of us. Looking at everyone's puzzled expression, Yi Qingluo smiled lightly and raised her brows. The help that Beiyuan mentioned, all of you will know very soon. She looked at Xiang Shengfa and said with a smile, Xiang Shengfa, you'll find out soon enough. After saying that, she raised her hand and pointed at the undead puppets that had crashed into the barrier. What do you think about these undead puppets? The Devil class students looked at each other for a while. Chapter 31-21. They don't have blood. Mo Yuying's flat voice rang. Finally met someone who is even more inhuman than me. Although it was still a flat voice without any fluctuations. But those who understood Mo Yuying could hear the excitement in her words. Devil class crowd. What was there to be excited about? That group of monsters that didn't look like humans was their enemy. Could it be? Mo Yuying had treated that group of monsters as her companions? Facing everyone's puzzled gazes, Mo Yuying looked at them blankly as she spoke in a flat tone. I'm human, they aren't. Phew. That's great. Lu Xiaoyu heaved a sigh of relief. I was really afraid that you would classify yourself as one of them. Mo Yuying stared blankly at Lu Xiaoyu. Her empty and lifeless eyes stared at Lu Xiaoyu, causing her hairs to stand on end. She hid behind a devil class student and shrunk back. Stop fooling around. Yin Xiaoyi kept the black sickle blade as she waved the long spear in her hand, trying to feel it. Qingluo, can these weapons pay those monsters? Yi Qingluo raised her brows as she smiled, but didn't say a word. Ruopan leaned forward. Those monsters are really impenetrable. The Overlord's barrier only made them lose their arms and legs. If we directly slash at them, they won't die, right? Yi Qingluo mysteriously curled her lips as she shot a glance towards the group of dead puppets outside the barrier as she patted Ruopan's shoulder. Won't you know after you try? Ruopan was pushed to the side of the barrier by Yi Qingluo. Just as the four eyes met with the missing arms and legs, the red blooming flesh and the ghastly white bones of the dead puppets, Ruopan's face turned pale. Me? I go and try? Madame Qingluo, you have too much confidence in me. Just such a bloody scene and you're so scared? Then in future, how are you going to follow me to the battlefield? Yi Qingluo didn't continue to force her as her lips curled up slightly, giving a calm and indifferent smile. Ruopan's petite body stiffened. Yi Qingluo continued to smile. Didn't you say you will believe me? Ruopan's 5 fingers tightly gripped the weapon in her hand. His pale face slowly regained its color. She pursed her slightly pale lips tightly. Right, I trust Madame Qingluo. His words fell. Ruopan took a deep breath and walked out of the barrier. There was no hesitation in her footsteps. Outside the barrier, Sacred Elephant couldn't help but frown. Yiqing Luo's one sentence actually had such a huge impact? It was as if it had given the seemingly weak and cowardly little girl great courage. It was as if the little girl had forgotten about the bloody, disgusting, and terrifying corpse puppets. How could a young girl like her influence the people around her so easily? What kind of magic was this? There was no time to think. Rupan resolutely walked out of the barrier. The expression on Rupan's face was firm, and she was not afraid at all. A cold gleam flashed across Xiang Shengfa's eyes as he ordered, "Go! Tear her to pieces." You believe in Yiqing Luo? Trusting Yiqing Luo unconditionally? He wanted to destroy the faith of these people, to let them see with their own eyes how Yiqing Luo personally pushed her companions who trusted her to death. The corpse puppets received the order. They immediately gave up on charging against the barrier and quickly turned their bodies, rushing towards Rupan's direction. The corpse puppets which had lost their arms and legs, although there wasn't a drop of blood on them. Chapter 31-22. Rupan frowned tightly as the expression on her face turned strange. This stench of blood was not an ordinary kind of pungent smell, especially when faced with so many dismembered corpses pouncing towards her. Rupan felt her stomach churning. Rupan! Rupan! Lu Xiaoyu and the rest saw Rupan's pale face and were shocked as they cried out Rupan's name. They stood in the array barrier, and when they saw this scene, they felt their scalps go numb as they felt extremely disgusted. Not to mention Rupan, who was in close proximity with that group of monsters. Lu Xiaoyu worriedly shifted her gaze to Yiqing Luo as she hugged her arm and was about to speak. But she saw Yiqing Luo's lips curled up slightly. That arc was extremely devilish. Inexplicably, it calmed down Lu Xiaoyu's worries and panic. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as her voice was calm and steady. Raise the sword in your hand and slash forward, displaying the first form of the 15 styles of flowing cloud storm. Yiqing Luo's voice was like a clear spring, flowing into Rupan's heart. It made Rupan's flustered and frightened heart immediately calm down. Her body instinctively started to move according to Yiqing Luo's words. The long sword danced and the sword waves followed the profound waves, one round after another, creating ripples. The sword body turned. The sword light floated. Those corpses which had already pounced in front of Rupan were forced to retreat several steps by this sword light. And making use of this gap, Rupan's figure moved. The long sword in her hand was like the floating clouds and flowing water, drawing out the sword waves. Following that, it turned into a gust of wind, speedily attacking the enemies in front. Swish, swish, swish. The sword shadows flickered. Dong, dong, dong. Following that, it was the sound of a heavy object falling onto the ground. Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. Those 7 to 8 corpses which surrounded Rupan were all slashed by the sword light, and their limbs were separated as they fell onto the ground. Of course, this wasn't the most shocking thing. What was shocking was this time. Those corpses which fell onto the ground didn't get up again. They were like pieces of soulless puppets which lost control and didn't move at all. Xiang Shengfa's face turned pale. He took a few steps forward and glared at the 7 or 8 corpse puppets on the ground. He clenched his fists and shouted, "All of you get up!" During the conversation, Xiang Shengfa's clenched fist emitted a gust of yin qi. The yin qi quickly darted in the direction of the undead puppet. However, the yin qi lingered above the undead corpse puppet, drifting in a circle. It disappeared into thin air. The undead puppets were still lying on the ground, lifeless. Xiang Shengfa's clenched fists trembled and drooped down. On his face, there was a rare look of panic. How is this possible? Wasn't the secret weapon of Gloomy Palace invulnerability? How could he be killed by that little girl's sword? Am I dreaming? Our secret weapon is obviously invincible and all-conquering. How could he be defeated? I don't believe it, I don't believe it. The disciples of Abyss Palace stared at this scene with their mouths agape. Following that, each of them hugged their heads and brainwashed themselves. Facing the shock of the people of Abyss Palace, as well as the fangirls of the students of Devil Class who were shocked and in awe. Chapter 31-23. The students of the Devil Class. opened their bright and sparkling eyes, as their mouths gave out joyful shouts. One by one, they rushed out of the spirit formation with their weapons in hand. When the last person left the spirit formation, Yiqing Luo asked Dmo Xian to remove the enchantment. She held onto Dmo Xian's palm as her brows curved into crescents. "We've agreed on this. You're not allowed to lay a hand on these corpse puppets." Dmo Xian shook his head helplessly. His eyes were filled with love and helplessness, almost drowning in his warmth. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she tugged Dmo Xian's hand, giving a mischievous and ridiculing look as she swept past those dumbstruck secluded palace disciples. She said, "As for the other humans, birds, and magical beasts, I'll leave them to you." Her voice wasn't low. Those from the Dark Nether Palace could hear it clearly. The expressions of the disciples of the Dark Nether Palace quickly changed from shock to shock and fear. They abruptly raised their heads and stared fearfully at Dmo Xian's direction. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly at them, but her words were directed at Dmo Xian. "Ah Xian, if today you kill more enemies than me, I will give you a reward." Dmo Xian's long and narrow peach blossom eyes narrowed. "This trick, just coax those brothers of yours." Yiqing Luo blinked her quick-witted eyes as she put on an innocent expression, tilting her head as she laughed softly. "Don't tell me, Ah Xian doesn't want my reward?" Dmo Xian's eyes dimmed as his large palm suddenly clasped Yiqing Luo's little hand. His slender fingers gently scratched the center of her palm. That itchy touch made Yiqing Luo's petite body shudder suddenly. Instinctively, he wanted to retract his hand. But when she looked at the man's eyes, they were as bright as obsidian, but as deep as the sea, dark and gloomy as if they were hiding some kind of shocking deep meaning. Yiqing Luo's heart thumped as it pounded fiercely. Her charming eyes also unconsciously wanted to shift her gaze away. Dmo Xian released her hand. Without waiting for her to speak again, the man had already turned into a blur, disappearing in front of her. In the air, the man's elegant sandalwood scent seemed to be lingering around her. "Ah!" Suddenly, a shrill and miserable cry resounded from nearby. Yiqing Luo looked towards the direction of the voice. An afterimage moved between the disciples of the Palace of Darkness at the speed of light. Everywhere it went, it would flick away wave after wave of dark secluded palace disciples, and those demon beasts controlled by the Swanee, causing them to fall to the ground. That afterimage flew past. Yiqing Luo could vaguely discern it. It was a purple figure. It was Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes were tainted with a smile. It seemed that Ah Xian cared a lot about the reward she mentioned. In order not to lose to Ah Xian, she also needed to work hard. Yiqing Luo took out a specially refined long sword from the profound phoenix ring, and weighed it in her hand. Then he leapt up and started fighting with his brothers. Weapons for the brothers of devil class. In the past 3 days, she and Tang Beiyuan had extracted Dark Yin's psychic power from the Hall of Artifact to forge weapons. Because Old Man Sung wasn't here, she wasn't too proficient in controlling the Azure Dew bracelet. She only tried to extract a little bit of Dark Yin's psychic power. The weapons that were manufactured were only 50 over pieces. It was more than enough to deal with these defective undead corpse puppets. But if it was those semi-finished products or finished products which she had seen previously, these weapons could at most delay the speed of the corpses. Chapter 31-24. But, from the looks of it, Elephant Saint technique seemed to only be able to control these defective undead puppets. Hence, in a short span of 1 hour, on this battlefield, the only ones who could stand were the members of Devil class and the 2 gigantic magical beasts. In addition to that, Elephant Saint technique. On the battlefield, there were corpses everywhere, as fresh blood stained the ground red. No matter how one looked at it, it was a ghastly sight. The brothers of Devil class, after going through this bloody battle, all revealed a tired expression on their faces. After all, they were only 10 over people, whereas the other party, including the flying beasts and land beasts, had at least 1,000 of them. No matter how they were beaten, in terms of stamina, they couldn't keep up. The excitement from before had completely turned into exhaustion. They were covered in blood from head to toe. They had their own. There were also secluded palace disciples, magical beasts. They stood weakly behind Yiqing Luo, panting heavily, as they passed a medicine bottle to each other. This was the enhanced version of the elemental energy pills, which Bai Ming Lu specially prepared for them. It could replenish their stamina quickly. You've worked hard. Yi Qing Luo inserted the long sword in her hand into the ground, as she raised a bright smile and looked at them. You guys are great. The brothers of the devil class all revealed expressions of ecstasy on their faces. To them, there was no encouragement or praise, which could be compared to Yi Qing Luo's recognition of their ability. Yi Qing Luo smiled again. Then her vision looked towards a pale-faced middle-aged man who was standing next to a pile of corpses not too far away. Her lips curled into a smile. Elephant Saint technique now. Who is the one who will not be able to return? You guys. Elephant Saint technique couldn't believe his own eyes. He couldn't believe that the secret weapon which they were so proud of was slashed by those ordinary grade, miraculous grade weapons, to the point where it could no longer be awakened. One must know. Secluded Palace's secret weapon was really impenetrable by water and fire. Even those cultivator family's people, whatever supreme grade weapons they took out, were unable to stop the undead puppets from crawling up again and continuing to attack. Why were Yi Qing Luo and the others able to deal with the undead puppets which had no weaknesses? All of Elephant Saint Technique's self-confidence at this moment collapsed. His face was deathly pale, and his eyes were dark and ruthless. Where was the slightest bit of his previous flirtatious, carefree, and evil smile? Here, let me calculate. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as her vision kept sweeping past the corpses strewn all over the ground. Following that, he rubbed his chin and raised his head to look at Dmo Xian beside him. Ah Xian, both of us seems to have killed the same number of people. Equal? Dmo Xian raised his brows, his deep eyes stared at her with a smile yet not a smile. Yi Qing Luo raised her chin up high as she replied in its Sundra manner. If I say it's a tie, it means it's a tie. Dmo Xian gave a low laugh, sounding a little helpless. Not waiting for Yi Qing Luo to speak again, the man's long arm moved and pulled the young lady into his arms. He raised his hand and pinched Yi Qing Luo's chin. He bent down and bit her on the lips. He curled his lips as if he had obtained a satisfactory deal. He compromised with a smile and said, All right, then it's even. Yi Qing Luo continued to act Sundra as she turned her head away. Dmo Xian chuckled. His large palm caressed her hair, his eyes filled with mirth. That kind of doting attitude. It continued to dazzle everyone's titanium alloy dog eyes. Not far away, Elephant Saint Technique's face was gloomy as he looked at the scene in front of him, taking advantage of the fact that the two of them were being sweet. Chapter 31-25. Everyone in Devil Class was in the midst of the excitement of victory, but also physical and mental exhaustion. No one had noticed Elephant Saint Dharma's actions. But, unfortunately, although Yi Qing Luo was being Sundra with Dmo Xian, her gaze was still fixed on the direction of Elephant Saint Dharma. After noticing Elephant Saint Dharma's actions, her lips curled as she held the long sword which was inserted into the ground and raised a sword wave. The silver sword ray flashed and a gale rose as it flew towards the direction of Elephant Saint Dharma. Damn it! Xiang Xingfa was forced to stop chanting, and he quickly retreated. Elephant Saint Dharma, don't try to escape with your tricks. Yi Qing Luo raised her long sword again as the silver blade gave off an extremely resplendent glow. Now the number of people I and Xian have killed is equal, so you're the only one left. Her fingertips moved. The sword ray exploded and the momentum was like a rainbow. If I kill you, I will win, Xian. How can you run away? Just as she finished her words, Yi Qing Luo moved. The long sword in her hand swirled up a sword wave. Elephant Saint Dharma squinted his sinister eyes. He could tell at one glance that Yi Qing Luo's swordplay was not familiar and full of flaws. Did this silly lass really think she was omnipotent? Yeah. Just based on this kind of mediocre swordplay, she wanted to capture him? Let's see how he would catch the flaw and capture her. Elephant Saint Dharma sneered as his lips twitched. Just as Yi Qing Luo's long sword carried the majestic sword chi and pierced downwards. He didn't evade as he raised his hand and turned it into a palm wind as he struck towards Yi Qing Luo's flaw. Yi Qing Luo was obviously panicking. She quickly tried to withdraw her long sword. How would Elephant Saint Dharma give her this chance? He leaped up and chased after her. Just as Elephant Saint Dharma was feeling complacent and thought he could capture Yi Qing Luo, that retreating young lady suddenly stopped in her tracks. An extremely shallow but evil smile appeared on her beautiful face. Elephant Saint Dharma's expression changed as he suddenly realized something. Damn it! He was tricked. He quickly concealed his aura and tried to avoid it. But it was too late. The girl suddenly raised the long sword in her hand. The longsword transformed into countless swords that were as thin as wings. Endless xian waves lingered around the long sword and dispersed. Go! Following Yi Qing Luo's command, the countless swords that were as thin as wings rushed towards Elephant Saint technique. Layers upon layers, light and thin, like the drifting clouds in the sky. The violent sword light caused the surrounding air to tremble violently. Visible ripples also appeared in the air. Holy Elephant had nowhere to run. His eyes widened as his face was filled with terror and unresigned hatred. Yi Qing Luo, you despicable villain! He actually pretended that his swordsmanship was not good enough to lower his guard. Then he would lure him into a trap and finish him off in one strike. Too despicable. Elephant Saint Dharma finally understood it. Why was it that whenever Wolf Saint techniques, Butterfly Saint techniques and the others mentioned Yi Qing Luo, he looked like he was gnashing his teeth in anger? Despicable? Do you have the right to say this word? Yi Qing Luo sneered as a steady stream of profound energy was injected into the long sword. The sword chi became more and more turbulent. Almost at the next moment, it was about to envelop Elephant Saint Dharma and swallow him up completely. Just at this critical moment. Chapter 31:26. The black wind howled, as though a malicious spirit was howling. It brought along a bone-chilling cold intent. In an instant, it enveloped the Elephant Saint technique. The dazzling sword gleam clashed against the black wind. The two forces collided. Strong gales were stirred up in the surroundings, constantly beating against the surroundings. Rumble. A deafening explosion shook the ground. The two forces collided and exploded with a loud bang. The airwaves rolled and the wind howled. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she stared at the direction where the strong qi spread. Just as she was about to go forward, a hand hooked onto her waist. Tightly, she was pulled into an embrace. The man hugged her with one hand. The other hand was raised as his sleeves fluttered. The shimmering purple light turned into a ray of flowing light as it scurried forward. But in an instant, the rolling airwaves in front of them had already dispersed. In front of them, there was no Elephant Saint technique and that strange black wind. Where are they? What's going on? Where did that black wind come from? How could they possibly escape under our eyes? They definitely haven't gone far. Let's chase. Devil Class's students looked at the empty direction in shock, as their faces revealed an angry expression. We won't be able to catch up. Yi Qing Luo waved her hand, indicating for them to calm down. That black wind's power is very strong and very strange. So be it if they escaped. To be able to rescue them under Dmo Xian's and hers eyelids. It showed how strange that black wind was. Since that black wind dared to appear so boldly, it must have 100% confidence. Even if they chased after them, it would only be a waste of energy. Moreover, after their brothers had gone through this battle, they were indeed tired. She kept her long sword and looked at Devil Class and the rest. As long as Elephant Saint technique is in the Palace of Darkness, there will be another chance to cross hands. Now that he has escaped, he can bring the news that we can deal with the corpse puppets back to the Palace of Darkness. At least, for a short period of time, the people from the Palace of Darkness will not dare to act rashly. Time after time of crossing hands. It could be said that the Palace of Darkness was exhausted to the extent of exhaustion. To be able to invade the South Continent under such circumstances, what they relied on was the corpse puppets. Now the undead corpse puppets had a nemesis. Unless the Palace of Darkness sent those semi-finished undead puppets to test the waters. Otherwise, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness could only choose to bide their time and observe while repairing the corpses and puppets. During this period of time, the people from the Dark Nether Palace probably wouldn't attack again. He would take this opportunity to forge another batch of weapons. Most importantly, Yi Qingluo was also waiting for Old Man Song's return. Let's go back and rest first. Yi Qingluo looked at the expressions on everyone's faces. They were still somewhat hesitant as she spoke out with a smile. Following that, she took the lead to hold on to Dmo Xian's arm as they strode towards the open city gates. Everyone in Devil class looked at each other. In the end, he still followed them. Yi Qingluo raised her little chin as she rested it on Dmo Xian's arm. Ah Xian, since the great elephant saint technique has run away then. The two of us should still be based on the same amount, so the reward that I promised you earlier has to be cancelled. Dmo Xian met her crafty eyes and his thin lips curled up into a smile. In his deep eyes, there was also a bottomless tranquility. Just like there were words in his smile. The group of them walked into the city gates. The deafening cheers caused them to be slightly startled. The soldiers rushed forward excitedly as they hugged the bunch of brothers from Devil class tightly. The brothers from Devil class were first overwhelmed and not used to it. Chapter 31:27. The great general also walked over from the top of the city walls. His eyes were red and he was so agitated that he wanted to hug Yi Qingluo to express his gratitude and excitement. Among the soldiers, a hug was the highest form of etiquette. However, there was an invisible barrier that stopped him in his tracks. The great general was stunned as he looked at Dmo Xian in a daze. Instantly he reacted. He scratched his helmet awkwardly and laughed joyfully. I've overstepped my boundaries. Miss Yi, thank you, really thank you. It's you who saved the South Continent, saved all of us. While he was speaking, the usually strong and unyielding great general couldn't help but choked with sobs. He kept on thanking her agitatedly. He simply couldn't believe everything in front of him. As though he was in a dream. This bunch of young lads and young ladies actually had such powerful battle power. The great general who had been on the battlefield for so many years, how could he not tell? These young lads' battle awareness and standard had all gone through special training. They displayed the true meaning of fast, vicious and accurate to the fullest. Moreover, these youngsters were able to deal with those monsters which they had racked their brains, but were unable to deal with. No. Not only were they unable to deal with them, even Gufeng Sect's sect master and the Imperial Palace's reinforcements had suffered numerous losses in the hands of those monsters. But these 10 young lads had annihilated the enemy's army. Flying beasts and secluded palace's disciples, those monsters were all killed. Moreover, these 10 people were not in any danger. Looking at them, it was as though they had walked out from a blood pool. Covered in blood, but their expressions didn't show any signs of pain. Apparently, they had only suffered some superficial injuries. The West Continent's heroine was indeed worthy of the hero title. Those young lads and young ladies beside her were absolutely not ordinary people. These children could almost be called as talented young lads and young ladies. In future, they would definitely be famous in the Nirvana realm. So many talents. They were actually kept by Yi Qingluo's side. Moreover, they were extremely loyal. The great general suddenly thought of something. He suddenly widened his eyes as he stammered, These children, don't tell me they are the World Mercenary Group's mercenaries. The World Mercenary Group. They had all heard of the Defiance Mercenary Group that had soared to the top of the world of mercenary groups in a short period of time. The momentum of their growth was comparable to the current Palace of Gloomy Darkness. It was said that in the first month of the establishment of the regiment, thus they were able to complete the most difficult and complicated mission. He had successfully infiltrated the Death God Castle and returned safely, completing his mission. Later on, it was said that they recruited a group of elite veteran mercenaries. Under the orderly and strict management, everything was done in an orderly manner. In a short period of time, the World Mercenary Group had already developed into a large-scale mercenary group. Although the World Mercenary Group was currently just a silver plate mercenary group, but their strength was definitely beyond the gold medal. Yi Qingluo smiled. That's right, they are indeed the World Group's brothers. Speaking of which, it had already been a long time since she returned to the World Group to take a look. However, Holy Pirate, that old man, was here. The World Group would definitely become the #1 mercenary group. When the great general heard this, The expression on his face immediately became extremely excited. Chapter 31:28. Great General. Yi Qing Luo interrupted the great general's agitated words. We're a little tired. May I know if there's any place in the city where we can rest? The great general was stunned but quickly reacted as he scratched his head. I'm so sorry. I'm a boorish man and I don't know how to look at the timing. Yes, although the city had been destroyed by secluded palace, but there's still a place to rest. The place to rest was a well-preserved inn 500 meters away from the city gate. After walking to the inn, Yi Qing Luo's line of sight was placed on the huge mansion which was a few hundred meters away from the inn. There were groups of soldiers standing at the entrance of the huge mansion. Indistinctly, they could hear someone's voice coming from the mansion. That's the safe zone. The refugees all stay there. The great general explained by the side. Yi Qing Luo nodded. Miss Yi, fellow heroes, this way please. The great general stretched out his hand as he led everyone into the inn. The group of people stepped into the inn. Today, everyone can rest here for a night. Tomorrow we'll return to Gufeng sect. Patriarch will definitely treat you with great hospitality. The great general cupped his fists towards everyone as he said respectfully. Hospitality is fine, but there's no need for hospitality. Yi Qing Luo smiled. Secluded palace has yet to retreat, so other matters are not suitable to be handled. Right. The great general smiled embarrassedly as he scratched his head. Then you guys rest first. I still have to return to the city gate to keep watch. When the reinforcements arrive, I'll let them rest for a night and not disturb your rest. Reinforcements? Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. Prepare some medicine. They might be injured. Almost 2 hours had passed. The reinforcements had yet to arrive. Apparently, they were held up by something and were unable to rush over, which meant that a fierce battle was bound to happen. Although the great general had his doubts, but he didn't voice it out as he nodded in response and left the inn. After the soldiers left, those devil-class students who had been pretending to be serious instantly laid paralyzed on the ground. There were a few who flew towards the kitchen, trying to find something to drink or eat. Before they could move, they suddenly smelled a fragrance as it seeped into their noses. Shortly after, a red figure walked over with a large tray in his hands. The youth's expression was cold like frost, and there was not a trace of warmth in his eyes. His red robe did not make him look beautiful at all. Instead, it made him look even more austere. Food. He spat out 2 words coldly and slapped the tray. The tray landed steadily on the table in the middle of the inn. When the brothers of devil class saw this figure, they were all stunned as they stared with their eyes wide open. Chu Wuxin. Lu Xiaoyu looked at the piping hot and fragrant dishes, then looked at Zhu Wuxin, who had no warmth on his face, and shuddered. Are you sure that this is for us to eat? Zhu Wuxin glanced at her coldly, as if mocking her. Isn't this nonsense? Lu Xiaoyu shuddered again. If it had been anyone else, her words would indeed have been nonsense. But the one who prepared the meal was Zhu Wuxin, Death God Castle Master Zhu Wuxian. It was a cold and emotionless face paralysis. Surely there wasn't poison in this food, right? If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't need to poison you. Zhu Wuxian seemed to have seen through everyone's thoughts as he spat out every single word in an icy cold voice. Chapter 31:29. Devil Class's Crowd. The meaning behind his words. This bunch of them were merely incidental? Did they need to be so honest? Are you eating or not? Seeing the 10 over of them staring at him, Zhu Wuxian's brows creased impatiently. The 10 over of them moved in unison as their gazes shifted towards the extremely fragrant dishes on the trays, as they swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Eat. Want to eat. But really, could they eat? Zhu Wuxian's impatient cold eyes stared straight at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo, if they don't eat, you finish it yourself. Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo expressed that this child's EQ was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. If only she wasn't the person who was pestered by Zhu Wuxian. She absolutely had a stomach full of words to roast about Zhu Wuxian's method of wooing girls. She didn't know who was the one who guided him behind the scenes to these messy ways of wooing girls. That person probably didn't know how low Zhu Wu Xian's EQ was. After the big battle, when she was both physically and mentally exhausted. As a warm man, Zhu Wu Xian personally cooked for her, and those brothers of hers to cook. This action simply caused the favorable impression to go through the roof in minutes. Coupled with that good looks of his, any girl would be smitten by him. Of course, other than her, whose mind was filled with Dmo Xian's looks, was the exception. But unfortunately, Zhu Wu Xian's mouth couldn't spit out any nice words of love. Was he forcing her to eat the food that he personally cooked, or forcing her? Since when did we say that we're not eating? Devil Class's brothers, hindered by Zhu Wu Xian's powerful aura, pouted as they complained softly, although their voices were soft. But in the spacious and quiet inn's main hall, it was clearly transmitted into everyone's ears. Zhu Wu Xian's cold eyes swept across. Devil Class's brothers shrunk their necks. In their hearts, they were silently thinking, with this attitude he still wanted to woo their boss? Learn more from the overlord. Looking at the atmosphere in front of them, it was gradually turning stiff. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and cleared her throat. Young Master Zhu said that this is prepared for everyone, and since everyone is hungry, there's no need to reject it. She pulled Dmo Xian and took the lead to walk to the table in the center, pulling the chair over to sit down. All right, don't just stand there. After you've filled your stomach, just find a room and rest for a while. Devil Class brothers first hesitated for a moment. Then, step by step, he slowly moved to the table. While observing Dmo Xian's expression, he paid attention to Zhu Wuxin's expression. Then he sat down anxiously. Dmo Xian was unperturbed as he received the wooden chopsticks from Yiqing Luo. His lips curled into a faint arc as he started to eat. The few of them looked at each other. There was another moment of silence. They picked up their wooden chopsticks and started eating. Not far away, Zhu Wuxin's eyes were cold and emotionless as he looked ahead. He started to gorge himself like a refugee fleeing from a famine. His cold and solemn face had a slight change that was hard to detect. If one looked closely, perhaps he could see it. The cold and hard lines on his face softened a little, and his thin lips, unknowingly, curled into an extremely shallow arc. After some time, he seemed to have realized his own changes. His brows creased, as though he was trying to escape from something, as he took quick steps towards the direction of the kitchen, walking over. Chapter 3130. Yiqing Luo had gone through close to 2 hours of battle, and her stamina had been depleted quite a bit. Adding on to that, Zhu Wu Xian's culinary skills were indeed not bad. These dishes were all made according to her favorite taste. Yiqing Luo ate very comfortably. As she was eating, her waist suddenly felt itchy. Her petite body shuddered slightly as she dodged to one side. She raised her head from the bowl and stared at the man next to her. Stop fooling around. Dmo Xian had long put down his chopsticks as he lazily leaned against the back of the chair. One of his hands was still on her waist. Following that stare from her, the man's slender fingers once again squeezed a little harder. His thin lips curled upwards as his narrow peach blossom eyes were filled with a deep glint, unable to see through his thoughts. But Yiqing Luo could obviously feel that a dangerous aura was spreading. Her slender brows creased as she put down her chopsticks. Her little hand silently stretched under the table as she held onto the man's messing around big palm. Following that, she gave him a warning stare. This was the main hall. As long as those Devil Class brothers lowered their heads slightly, they would be able to see their hands intertwined under the table. If they were really caught red-handed by the Devil Class brothers, she would really have no face to meet these bunch of brothers. Dmo Xian lazily squinted his peach blossom eyes as the young lady's hand, which was held tightly, suddenly exerted force. The young lady's hand was held in his palm. His slender fingers gently tickled the young lady's palm. Yiqing Luo's body shuddered again. What's the matter? Lu Xiaoyu, who was sitting opposite, noticed something wrong with Yiqing Luo as she looked at her in puzzlement. Immediately, everyone's gaze turned towards her. Yiqing Luo's petite body stiffened as her lips twitched and finally curled into a smile as she shook her head with a dry smile. No, nothing. Lu Xiaoyu and the rest stared at Yiqing Luo in puzzlement, and looked at the side at the extremely lazy and contented overlord. Following that, all of them retracted their gazes. Overlord and Qing Luo were so close to each other. If Qing Luo felt uncomfortable, Overlord would definitely be the first to discover it. Hence, everyone started to pick up their chopsticks as they continued to struggle. Yi Qing Luo tensed up her body and maintained the calm expression on her face. She naturally leaned towards Dmo Xian's direction. "What are you doing? Did you have a good time eating?" Instead of answering, he asked back with a lazy smile on his face. Yi Qing Luo. Was this the sign of someone getting jealous again? When they started eating, wasn't he very calm and collected? Facing Yi Qing Luo's frenzied and helpless body, Dmo Xian smiled without saying a word. However, the fingers of the hand that was holding her little hand started to tickle her palm again. His fingers, which were slightly calloused, rubbed it skillfully. Yi Qing Luo only felt goosebumps appearing on her skin. An indescribable feeling pervaded the air. Right, Qing Luo? Yan Xiaoyi suddenly thought of something and raised her head. Yi said that the class leader's goo poison can be temporarily suppressed for a period of time, but this method can only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. We still have to try our best to cure the goo. Ajanhi. Yi Qing Luo was just about to open her mouth. The man started to intentionally create trouble again. She was so numb that she lost her voice for quite some time. Devil Class's brothers' gazes were filled with puzzlement as they looked towards her. Chapter 31-31. He's awake. Lu Xiaoyu nodded. But he still needs to rest for another half a month. Yan Xiaoyi. In this half a month, Yi has to suppress the goo poison in his body every 3 days. Suppress it once every 3 days? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly. Then will it affect Ajan's body? Half a month later, if we don't suppress it, will Ajan be controlled by the goo poison again? There will definitely be an impact. Yan Xiaoyi lowered her gaze and sighed out helplessly. After suppressing it within this half a month, the goo poison in Ajan's body will enter a deep slumber for at least the next 3 years. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips tightly. Perhaps the atmosphere was a little depressing. Dmo Xian did not deliberately tease her. He just gently held her hand, giving her warmth. Xiao Jin saw that Yan Xiaoyi's emotions had also sunk down as he smiled lightly and caressed Yan Xiaoyi's head, immediately raising his head and looking at Yi Qing Luo. Yi said that with your strength, you'll definitely be able to head to the upper realm within 3 years. At that time, bring Ajan along with you to the upper realm. You can look for his aunt and the previous saintess of the Miao tribe. They'll definitely have a way to help you get rid of the goo. And Yi Qing Luo nodded. Ziqing will take good care of the monitor, and Lulu will watch over there. The monitor will be fine. Lu Xiaoyu clenched her fists and said firmly. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes lifted up slightly as her gaze swept past the few people in front of her, and her lips curled into a huge smile. Amen, it will definitely be alright. Alright, I've already told Luo about the class president. Don't talk about it anymore. Xiao Jin looked at Yi Qing Luo. Director still has a few words for us to pass to you. Dean? Yi Qing Luo was momentarily stunned. But very quickly, he remembered that the current director of the Heavenly Academy was that crazy old man Guiyu. The dean said. Xiao Jin cleared his throat and immediately assumed the posture of old man Guiyu, imitating his tone. Little brat. You haven't come back to see me for such a long time. Believe it or not, I'll teach that younger brother of yours to become a heinous student. He paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and continued to imitate. I already guessed that you would definitely help the South Tide continent when it was in danger. It just so happens that the bunch of brats in your class have been nagging about escaping from the academy every day and secretly looking for you. Now, I will send a few students with decent strength to capture you. Over at the South Below continent, whatever you want to do, just go ahead and do it. With this daddy here to clean up your mess, you don't have to be afraid of anything. Although the first part of his words was very rude, and he seemed to be very angry, Lin Mingya did not expect him to be so rude. But behind it, it was obvious that he was worried and concerned about her. She was the one who brought old man Guiyu to this world. The second was an elder who cared for her very much. Cough cough. After Qiao Jin finished imitating, he coughed again. He patted his chest and recovered his own voice. I've conveyed the message, he also said. After the South Continent's matter is over, he wants us to kidnap you and bring you back to Heavenly Academy. I don't think it's possible to bring him back. Yi Qing Luo smiled. After the South Below Continent's matter is over, I still have to make a trip to East Below Continent. Yan Xiaoyi, are you going to leave your heroic deeds in every continent in Nirvana realm? Chapter 31-32. Before collecting the 4 sacred beast pearls, Yi Qing Luo temporarily didn't want to tell all the brothers in Devil class that she was heading to the upper realm. If he told them in advance, it would only make them more worried. After all, the upper realm, for the people of the Nirvana realm, it was a place that people yearned for, but it was also a very dangerous place. Alright, Lu Xiaoyu suddenly thought of something. Kitty originally wanted to follow along, but the Dean and Master Gui Wu seemed to have something to deal with and couldn't leave. So young Master Mo forcefully kept Kitty by his side and stayed in the Heavenly Academy. She blinked her beautiful eyes. Young Master Mo asked me to tell you not to worry about Kitty. He will take good care of Kitty. This so Mo, abducting someone is so open and above board? She had such a cute little kitten. She was abducted by him just like that? However, with Kitty Lee's temperament, if she really didn't want to stay by Zomo's side, he would definitely turn the world upside down, and he had to escape no matter what. It could be seen that Kitty Lee was actually reluctant to leave Zomo. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue. Forget it, forget it. A grown girl can't be kept at home. My little kitten has really been abducted by a wild man. Wild man? In the minds of the brothers in Devil class, Zomo's image surfaced. Soon after, they all nodded in agreement. He did look like a wild man. The atmosphere gradually returned to normal. The group chatted as they ate. Over this period of time, everyone's affairs were summarized in a concise manner. This also allowed Yi Qing Luo to understand the recent developments of Devil class in Heavenly Academy. For example, Lu Xiaoyu, Tao Tao and the others had already joined the Devil class. For example, Lu Xiaoyu found evidence of Si Yanmu colluding with the dark forces in the President's Office of Faculty Council. As a result, Si Yanmu was arrested and Lu Xiaoyu replaced him as the new president of the Heavenly Academy. For example, when they were preparing to interrogate Si Yanmu, he was taken away by the people from the dark forces. It further confirmed that Si Yanmu was a member of the dark forces. Because of this, the Si family also suffered. With the cooperation of Monarch and Yi Fengyu, the Si clan was uprooted. And so on and so forth. In the end, the conversation stopped at a student who couldn't hold on, and fell asleep against a pillar. Yi Qing Luo then asked everyone to find their own rooms to rest. Silence gradually returned to the hall. Yi Qing Luo yawned and leaned into Dmo Xian's arms, her arms hooked around his neck. A Xian hug. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped, his languid peach blossom eyes twinkled with a devilish glint. He raised his thin lips and looked at the girl with a faint smile. Then, under the girl's charming gaze, he slowly bent down and whispered into her ear. You know how to please me. This means that you know where you went wrong. This low and hoarse voice had a magnetism that made people sink into it. It hooked Yi Qing Luo's little heart, thumping nonstop. Her body trembled slightly. The more the man enjoyed it, the lips that were right next to her ear parted slightly. His thin lips brushed past her earlobe. Yi Qing Luo's fingers gripped Dmo Xian's robes tightly. Lil Luo, eating another man's food in front of me, eating it so deliciously. You deserve to be punished. Every word he said was magnetic and mellow. I was really hungry. Yi Qing Luo explained softly. Quibble. Chapter 31-33. Ouch. Yi Qing Luo groaned in pain. This feeling of pain and numbness was so unfamiliar that she couldn't get used to it. She was just about to slide her hand down from Dmo Xian's neck to push him. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. Soon after, a cold voice said, I'm hungry. His tone was calm. Just by hearing it, he knew who it was. Yi Qing Luo's hand froze on Dmo Xian's neck. She was in a daze for a long time before she regained her senses. Her cheeks suddenly turned red. Holy sh*t. How could Zhu Wuxin appear at this time so coincidentally? This posture, damn it. No matter how he explained it, he couldn't explain it at all. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed as though she was the one who had hooked her arms around Diemo Xian's neck, acting coquettishly to ask for kisses. Being intimate and loving in private is fun. When they were being intimate, they were seen by others. This was awkward, moreover. It was the kind of awkwardness that couldn't be more awkward. However, Yi Qingluo's heart was filled with curses, but Zhu Wu Xian didn't seem to mind at all. Zhu Wuxin's face was still cold, and there was no warmth in his eyes. He stared at her and repeated word by word, "I'm hungry." Diemo Xian hooked Yi Qingluo's petite figure as he held her in his arms, not letting Zhu Wu Xian see her flushed red face. To Diemo Xian, Yi Qingluo's demeanor was like a girl next door. It was enough for him to appreciate it alone. If you're hungry, then go and eat. Don't disturb me and Leluoer's rest. Diemo Xian held Yi Qingluo in his arms as he headed towards the second floor. Zhu Wuxin's figure flashed and blocked in front of the two. He was expressionless as he repeated, "I'm hungry." His icy cold gaze was not directed at Diemo Xian, but he stared straight at Yi Qingluo, whose back was facing him. Even though Yi Qingluo's back was facing Zhu Wu Xian, she could feel Zhu Wuxin's ice-cold gaze, which seemed to be covered in frost, piercing her back. In particular, the man who was hugging her had increased his strength. Obviously, this vinegar jar had been knocked over again. In Diemo Xian's arms, Yi Qingluo patted her face, trying hard to restore her complexion back to normal. He then lifted his head up from Diemo Xian's arms and looked at Zhu Wu Xian. "I'm hungry." Seeing Yi Qingluo looking at him, Zhu Wu Xian narrated the story expressionlessly. Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased slightly. "Didn't you prepare quite a lot of food in the kitchen earlier? Why didn't you eat when you're hungry?" "My hand hurts," he answered decisively. Yi Qingluo. What kind of stupid reason was that? Hand pain? How did he cook when his hands hurt? So, Yi Qingluo dragged out the last word, waiting for Zhu Wu Xian's next sentence. Zhu Wu Xian didn't beat around the bush as he stared straight at Yi Qingluo and spat out two words decisively, "Feed me." This time, Yi Qingluo was really speechless. They had gone one big round. Just for this purpose? He wanted her to feed him? You can cook, but you can't eat? Wasn't this excuse a little too lame? "I'm hungry." Seeing Yi Qingluo not moving, Zhu Wu Xian's eyes turned even colder. Yi Qingluo. She expressed that she really couldn't feed him. Only when she was extremely hungry, she ate the food that Zhu Wu Xian personally cooked. A certain overlord's vinegar jar had already flipped several jars. If she fed it to Zhu Wuxin, probably she was going to drown in vinegar. She absolutely couldn't feed him. Yi Qingluo cleared her throat. "Master Zhu, that I'm really tired. This overlord will feed you." Chapter 31-34. Just 4 words, but it made Yi Qingluo felt as though she was struck by lightning. Did she hear it wrong? What did Diemo Xian say? He feed? He was feeding Zhu Wuxin. Wasn't this style too beautiful? She couldn't even imagine it. Yi Qingluo looked at Diemo Xian with a complicated expression as she held his arm. "Ah Xian, you don't need to feed him his hand." Before he could say the word "I'm fine." But when she saw Diemo Xian's displeased gaze, she stopped talking. He raised his hand and his slender fingers gently pinched Yi Qingluo's lower jaw. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes were as deep as a deep pool, bottomless. "Don't tell me you want to feed him yourself?" He lowered his voice to a whisper. It sounded very calm and indifferent. But to Yi Qingluo, who understood Diemo Xian well, how could she not hear the displeasure in Diemo Xian's tone? Yi Qingluo felt a chill on her neck as she coughed lightly. "No, what I mean is don't bother." The word "him" had yet to leave her mouth when she was once again stopped by Diemo Xian's half-narrowed peach blossom eyes. Diemo Xian's fingers gently caressed her cheek. Soon after, his hand slid down from her face. He slowly walked toward Zhu Wu Xian. His expression was calm, but his aura was released invisibly. "Aren't you hungry? Why are you still standing here?" Zhu Wu Xian's expression changed slightly as he stared at him coldly. "I want Yi Qingluo. Unfortunately, everything that belongs to Lil Luo belongs to me." Diemo Xian's lips curled upwards. His smile was filled with ridicule, with a hint of boasting. After all, this hand of yours was only used to save Lil Luo, that is the only reason why others were able to take advantage of you. Since your hand is in pain, as Lil Luo's fiancé, I will naturally return this favor on behalf of Lil Luo. As he spoke, he was already in front of Zhu Wuxian. Dmo Xian's altitude was half a head higher than Zhu Wuxian. On top of that, he released his majestic aura. The two of them stood close to each other. Their auras were fully unleashed, and their energy surged. This scene, no matter how one looked at it, it was a ghastly sight. But Yiqing Luo somehow felt that this scenario had inexplicably taken another direction. Two men of the highest quality. They all had different styles. One was domineering and noble, while the other was cool and elegant. As they stood together, their eyes met. Yiqing Luo inexplicably saw a kind of bromance. When this thought flashed past her mind, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but shudder. She shook her head hard to get rid of this messy thought. Facing Dmo Xian's overbearing manner, Zhu Wuxian's brows creased even tighter as his thin lips moved slightly, about to open his mouth. However, he was interrupted by the man's voice. Young Master Chu, aren't you very hungry? How did he still have the strength to make excuses here? Or could it be that young Master Chu's hand doesn't hurt at all, and it's just an excuse to feed my fiancé to you? When he said the last sentence, he deliberately raised his tone. His words were filled with disdain. Zhu Wuxian's face twitched. The coldness in his eyes became more and more terrifying. His 5 fingers that were hanging by his side were tightly clenched into a fist, and he did not speak for a long time. After Yiqing Luo heard Dmo Xian's words, she finally understood Dmo Xian's intention. Dmo Xian could also tell that Zhu Wuxian's hand totally didn't affect his eating. Dmo Xian opened his mouth. How would Zhu Wuxian continue to insist on letting her feed him? But at the next instance, an icy cold voice broke her thoughts. I'm hungry. Hearing these 2 words, Yiqing Luo felt as though she was struck by lightning. Chapter 31-35. Dmo Xian went into a blank. Zhu Wuxian's face was cold and his gaze was icy cold as he stared at Dmo Xian. Don't dare. He was expressionless, but the corners of his lips were faintly curving upwards. Apparently, he was intentionally provoking Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo, who was watching by the side. These two were testing each other. They were sure that the other party didn't dare? But if they didn't play the cards according to common sense, these two, surely they weren't going to put on a gay scene, right? Although one of them was her boyfriend. But while she was still imagining this scene, she was still inexplicably excited. After all, these 2 men were the world's top existences. However, Yiqing Luo didn't have the chance to see this scene. Dmo Xian was already sneering as he hooked onto Zhu Wuxian's shoulder. This lord will feed you personally, enjoy it. Saying that, he hooked onto Zhu Wuxian and headed towards the direction of the kitchen. The 2 men's aura clashed. The energy surrounding them seemed as though they were about to start fighting if there was any disagreement. Just as the 2 of them were about to disappear around the corner, Yiqing Luo hurriedly followed up. She had just taken a few steps when Dmo Xian's deep voice stopped her. Go back to the room to rest. I'll be back to accompany you in a while. Not waiting for Yiqing Luo to reject, Dmo Xian had already hooked onto Zhu Wuxian and disappeared. Yiqing Luo stood on the spot as she was stunned. She really didn't need to follow them? Those 2 really wouldn't fight? Yiqing Luo thought about it and still felt worried. She chased after the direction where the 2 of them disappeared. But where were Dmo Xian and Zhu Wuxian in the kitchen? She released her sense of perception and sensed the surroundings. She didn't sense their presence at all. Yiqing Luo frowned. These 2. Wasn't it just feeding them? Why were they nowhere to be seen? After searching for 1 round, there was no result, so Yiqing Luo could only find a room to wait for Dmo Xian to return. Zhu Wuxian's hand was injured. Dmo Xian wasn't a willful person. It shouldn't be a big matter. As she was thinking, perhaps she was too tired. Yiqing Luo leaned against the headboard and in a daze, she fell asleep. He didn't know how long he had rested. By the time Yiqing Luo opened her eyes, She was already lying on the bed. One hand was circling her waist. His 2 strong and long legs were also firmly hooked around her. The man's head rested on her neck. His warm breath blew down from time to time. This posture, some were too intimate. "Are you awake?" A man's low and hoarse voice came from above. His voice was hoarse after waking up. It was full of magnetism. When he opened his mouth, his breath sprayed on her skin. Her body couldn't help but tremble. She stuffed it into his arms. "When did you come over?" "Feed Juwoo Xian until he's full, then he'll come over." Dmo Xian hugged her tightly. Upon mentioning Juwoo Xian, Yiqing Luo turned around and faced him. "You really fed Juwoo Xian?" Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his deep eyes gazed deeply at her. "Cough. If you don't want to say, then don't say." Yiqing Luo, who was getting goosebumps from his stare, lowered her head and stuffed it into his chest. "Since you've slept enough, then let's settle the debt between us." Dmo Xian took a deep breath of the fragrance on her body. Suddenly, his arm exerted strength. Yiqing Luo's body was lifted up forcefully. Chapter 31-36. Settle accounts? Settle what accounts? Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. Dmo Xian's peerless countenance was magnified in her eyes. "Xian." Yiqing Luo hurriedly stretched out her hand and blocked Dmo Xian's face. "Are you still jealous? Can't you tell that I have no feelings towards Juwoo Xian at all?" Dmo Xian laughed lightly. "But I'm feeling very uncomfortable." Yiqing Luo. Alright, if it was her. She would also feel uncomfortable. Then, how do you want to settle the accounts? Yiqing Luo compromised, but she stared at him righteously. "This is an inn and it's not a safe place. Things that cross the boundary absolutely cannot be done." She had just finished her words. Suddenly, the man was like a ferocious beast as he bent down and gave her lips a fierce kiss. Yiqing Luo. F***ck. He totally didn't hear what she said earlier, right? Yiqing Luo wanted to struggle, but the man's violent kiss slowly turned gentle. Initially, it seemed like he was venting something. Now it seemed like he was confirming something. Such complicated emotions made Yiqing Luo's struggling movements gradually slowed down. She stopped resisting. "Lulu." Not knowing how long they kissed, his low and hoarse voice brought with it an indescribable emotion. "Do you feel that I'm very overbearing?" He hugged her tightly. The strength in his hands was very tight. Yiqing Luo raised one hand and hugged him back. "Amen, indeed very overbearing." The man's hand on her waist tightened. Yiqing Luo's next sentence followed closely. "Overbearing, isn't it because you care about me?" She raised her eyes and looked at him with a smile. "I like it when you're overbearing towards me." Dmo Xian looked at her quietly. His eyes were deep and serene like a deep pool. She was unable to see through his eyes. Yiqing Luo's long curly eyes quivered as she raised her hand and caressed his face. "Xian, what's the matter?" The man's emotions were obviously not right. Dmo Xian didn't say a word. He was still using this complicated emotion to look at her. After some time, he slowly lowered his body. He pressed his lips against her forehead. His arms pulled her tightly into his embrace. The man's disappointed voice sounded a little ethereal. "Lulu, I'm very scared." This was a feeling he had never felt before. He even felt that he would never have such a feeling in his entire life. But, while facing Yiqing Luo, he truly felt what the word fear meant. Dmo Xian's tone made Yiqing Luo's heart tremble slightly. She raised her head and held his face with one hand. She slowly approached his lips and kissed him. "Why? I'm very happy to see you continue to grow. But every time I see the effort and price you have to pay for your growth, my heart aches. My heart aches so much that I wish I could keep you by my side and not let you suffer any harm." Yiqing Luo's heart trembled fiercely. She hugged Dmo Xian's waist tightly as she spoke in a resolute tone. "So in order to not let you worry, I will become stronger, so strong that no one can hurt me. But by then, will Lil Luo still need me?" Dmo Xian laughed softly as his voice sounded a little ethereal. Need. Yiqing Luo nodded her head vigorously without any hesitation. Her two hands were like a koala bear as it entangled Emotion tightly. If there's no Xian, there's no meaning for me to become stronger. Emotion's body stiffened slightly. Following that, he relaxed. Chapter 31-37. Yi Qingluo rubbed her little head against his chest. Xian, we've agreed to be together for the rest of our lives. Not only in this lifetime. The next lifetime, the life after that, the one after that. Anyway, we're going to be together. The young lady's sweet voice was like a warm spring, seeping into Emotion's heart. It warmed Emotion's panicky and scared heart. All right, my Xian has always been confident and flamboyant. You should believe in your own charm, that you can charm me till I can't see any other man. Yi Qingluo raised a big smile. Her little body moved into his arms. After that, she propped herself up and cupped his face with both hands. Her slender fingers pinched the skin on the side of his cheek and gently tugged on it. I love your peerless face so much. He chuckled. His big palm raised and held her little hand. His eyes were filled with a faint smile. In that case, if one day I don't have this face, I won't be able to charm you anymore? Charmed. As long as it's you, Xian, just a breath, you can make me fall head over heels. Yi Qingluo hooked his neck. Xian, you have no confidence in yourself? The two of them stared at each other. The man's ink-black eyes gazed deeply at her, as if he wanted to completely integrate her into the deep pool of his eyes. After a while, his thin lips curled up slightly and gently kissed her lips. Very lightly, just purely on her lips. After that, she heard his light to ethereal voice. It's not that I don't have confidence, but I care too much, so I'm too afraid. Yi Qingluo's brows, raised slightly, the long and narrow arc, drew out an enchanting meaning. She suddenly increased the strength of her hands. She wrapped her arms tightly around his neck. Her body leaned forward. She forcefully kissed his lips. Xian, I also care about you so. I will always be with you, you won't lose me. Emotion's pupils shrank slightly. Immediately, he turned his hand and pressed her down, changing from passive to active, fiercely sucking in her delicate fragrance. This kiss was like a raging fire being ignited. Yi Qingluo realized something and wanted to stop him. After all, the location wasn't right. But when she met the man's pair of eyes that seemed to carry thousands of spring water, so gentle that it could almost squeeze out water, all her voice was stuck in her throat, almost without any resistance. Just as the heavenly lightning struck the earthly fire, suddenly, a rumbling sound was heard. Something seemed to have collapsed. Immediately it was Yan Xiaoyi's voice. F***CK. Zhu Wuxin, are you sick? If you woke up early, then go to the kitchen and cook. What are you doing running around? Are you a F***king peeping Tom? Xiaoyi, calm down. Young Master Zhu might have just walked into the wrong room. Xiao Jin's voice followed closely behind. Wrong my ass. He's just jealous that we're a pair and is thinking of ways to take revenge on us. Yan Xiaoyi was infuriated. Xiao Jin comforted in a low voice. The noise in the hall also died down a little. Inside the room, the movements of the two people, Sky Thunder and Earth Fire, froze. Then they looked at each other for a long time. Yi Qingluo regained her senses from the beauty and immediately pushed Emotion away. I told you you can't do things that cross the boundary. The location and time are all wrong. Emotion's body stiffened as he was pushed away by Yi Qingluo. His expression was as black as the bottom of a pot. Yi Qingluo swiftly tidied herself up, as she was too embarrassed to look at Emotion. She just slid down from the bed. Chapter 31-38. Chef. Yan Xiaoyi choked on Zhu Wuxin's words. She did not understand what he meant. Zhu Wuxin was expressionless. You want me to cook? Are you treating me as a chef? Last night, didn't you go to the kitchen yourself? Yan Xiaoyi's mouth twitched. She really couldn't understand Zhu Wuxin's thoughts. Zhu Wuxian explained in a cold voice. Last night I cooked for Yi Qingluo. If I cooked for her alone, she wouldn't eat it. Yan Xiaoyi. They were just incidental. She was very clear about this, okay? Yan Xiaoyi suppressed her anger and gritted her teeth. Is this the main point? Was that the point? Is this it? Facing Yan Xiaoyi's frenzied roars, Zhu Wu Xian clearly did not feel the slightest bit guilty, or had any intention of explaining. Qiao Jin's soft voice could be heard throughout the entire hall. After Yi Qing Luo tidied herself up, she turned back and took a look at the man who was still lying on the bed with a face as black as charcoal. She coughed softly and leaned forward to give him a firm peck on the cheek to comfort him. He climbed off the bed and said, "I'll go out and take a look at the situation first. We'll have plenty of time in the future." Yi Qing Luo had just moved to the door. Behind her, the man suddenly chuckled. She stopped in her tracks and immediately turned around. The man reclined on the bed. Between his peach blossom eyes that were as bright as obsidian, there was light overflowing with color, like embellished stars. His black hair was scattered on his messy purple robe. There was also a strand of ink-black hair that slid across her robes, revealing a large portion of her skin. His skin wasn't extremely fair, but it was healthy and masculine. From Yi Qing Luo's angle, she could clearly see the man's perfect abs, all the way down. Moreover, at this moment, the man's thin lips were raised, and his smile was extremely devilish. Yi Qing Luo could only feel her blood rushing to her head as she swallowed her saliva. Motherf ***. This was a feast for the eyes. It was simply delicious. She really wanted to swallow him into her stomach in one gulp. Towards Dmo Xian's honey trap, Yi Qing Luo had never had any self-control. There's still a long way to go. Perhaps he heard the sound of the girl swallowing her saliva. Perhaps it was because of the young girl's naked gaze that was burning hot. The smile on the man's face became more and more magnificent. They were like beautiful flowers blooming in front of his eyes. The whole world was a riot of colors. Yi Qing Luo's cheeks flushed red. "I'm looking forward to it, my little." Just now, Dmo Xian chuckled again. That seductive attitude made one unable to control themselves. Yi Qing Luo seemed as though she was escaping as she dashed out of the room. Her cheeks were burning hot, and she couldn't calm down no matter how hard she tried. How could he understand the true meaning of only in the future? Yi Qing Luo rushed out of the room and shut the door tightly. Even though there was a door between them, she could feel that the man's burning gaze was still fixed on her body. Yi Qing Luo tried her best to retract her attention from Dmo Xian's earlier banter and ridicule. She tried her best to look downstairs. Like I said, the future is long. It wanted to swallow Dmo Xian. Any time is fine. Now it was better to focus on the dispute that had started early in the morning. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath and adjusted her emotions. Downstairs in the main hall, Yan Xiaoyi stepped on a long bench as her face was filled with anger, whereas Qiao Jin was half hugging her as he whispered something, probably coaxing her. Chapter 31-39. What's the main point? Zhu Wu Xian stared at Yan Xiaoyi as he spoke in a cold voice. It was better if he didn't ask. This question made Yan Xiaoyi fly into a rage. The main point is, what are you trying to do? By running around the room so early in the morning? Don't you know that you can't barge into a lady's room? If you see something which you shouldn't see, are you able to take the responsibility? What do you have that you shouldn't see? Facing Yan Xiaoyi's anger, Zhu Wu Xian remained calm. Yan Xiaoyi clenched her fists tightly. What do you mean by this? What are you trying to express? Zhu Wu Xian was expressionless, the literal meaning. Zhu Wu Xian. Yan Xiaoyi's fists were clenched so tightly that it made a cracking sound. Just with this attitude of yours, you still want to snatch the Overlord's woman? Save it. The Overlord is many times better than you. Unless Qing Luo is blind, she will not choose you and abandon the Overlord. Save some energy. Don't dream of such unrealistic dreams. This kind of words could be said. Devil Class's 10-over students had said it countless of times in their hearts. But this was the first time they said it out in front of Zhu Wu Xian. It could be seen that Yan Xiaoyi was really infuriated. Xiaoyi. Qiao Jin's expression changed as he immediately circled Yan Xiaoyi tightly, pulling her down from the long bench and blocking her behind him. Qiao Jin looked at Zhu Wu Xian with a grave expression as he opened his mouth, wanting to explain. But after seeing Zhu Wu Xian's icy cold gaze, he still dispelled the thought of explaining. As a man, Qiao Jin was very clear about this feeling. Although Zhu Wu Xian's expression of emotions was different from others, But he could tell. He was serious towards Yi Qingluo. Yan Xiaoyi's words, although were the truth, but to Zhu Wu Xian, it was pricking his heart. No man would be willing to be compared with another man, especially by the brother of the woman he loved. Forget about the comparison. But he was said to be totally incomparable to that man. Based on Zhu Wu Xian's character, how could he possibly accept it? As expected, Zhu Wu Xian, who was standing opposite, was no longer that kind of coldness which he could still endure. But it was a kind. It was extremely indifferent, so cold that there was not a trace of warmth or emotion. There was also a faint killing intent that spread out. Xiao Jin's expression grew increasingly grave. He firmly protected Yan Xiaoyi behind him as he vigilantly released his profound energy. Once Zhu Wuxin made his move, he would fight to the death to protect Yan Xiaoyi. An austere aura pervaded the hall. The hurricane swept up the dust on the ground. Tables and benches were constantly rubbing against the ground. What are you doing?" Suddenly, a young girl's clear voice floated down from upstairs. Xiao Jin's eyes lit up as he immediately looked towards the direction of the voice and called out, "Qingluo." Meanwhile, Zhu Wu Xian also raised his head as he looked towards Yi Qingluo's direction. His deep, black eyes were filled with a piercingly cold light. It was like a sharp frost blade on 1,000-year-old snow, causing people to shudder. However, this only lasted for an instant. The next moment, Yi Qingluo only felt a cool breeze caressing her face. In front of him, a blazing red figure enlarged in his eyes. Not knowing when Zhu Wu Xian had moved in front of her, a hand grabbed her wrist tightly as he raised it up. "I've been looking for you for a long time, so you're in this room." He opened his mouth coldly, without any fluctuations in his tone. Yi Qingluo frowned as she tried to struggle free from Zhu Wu Xian's hand. Chapter 3140. His strength was so strong that her wrist was starting to hurt. Yi Qingluo's brows creased even tighter. Just as she was about to open her mouth to ask Zhu Wu Xian to let go of her, below, Yan Xiaoyi was suddenly enlightened as she pointed at Zhu Wu Xian. "You scurried around the rooms early in the morning, just to look for Qingluo's room?" Zhu Wu Xian didn't even give her a glance. He stared at Yi Qingluo without blinking as his voice was icy cold. "Why are you hiding from me?" Hiding? Did she hide from him? Yesterday it was because she couldn't find a place for them to feed each other, so she casually found an empty room to rest. Furthermore, he scurried around the rooms early in the morning to look for her. What was he up to? "Last night, I was trapped in the kitchen by his barrier." Zhu Wu Xian's expression was solemn. "After I came out, I couldn't sense your presence in the inn." He suddenly increased the strength in his hand. It made Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased once again. But he didn't notice it as his voice was deep and cold. "You belong to me, you can't hide from me." Yi Qingluo. Here it goes again. Was he done yet? Why was it that every time they talked about this topic, she and Zhu Wu Xian seemed to be from two different worlds, not on the same channel? Why didn't Zhu Wu Xian understand her rejection? Yi Qingluo took a deep breath as her peripheral vision shot towards that tightly shut door behind her. Logically speaking, based on that vinegar jar's character, he should have rushed out long ago. But Dmo Xian was still in the room, with no intention to stop Zhu Wu Xian at all. What was this rhythm? What was Dmo Xian up to this time? Just as he was about to patiently declare his rights once more, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Suddenly, her wrist was violently pulled by someone. Zhu Wu Xian's long arm locked her tightly, not in his arms, but clamped down on her petite body, making her totally unable to move. This made Yi Qingluo's slender brows crease tightly. Damn it! Wasn't his hand hurting? Why did he have so much strength when his hand hurt? Not waiting for Yi Qingluo to curse silently, she had rushed out hurriedly and had not combed her hair, so Zhu Wu Xian tugged on it. The force wasn't great, but it was still a little painful. "Zhu Wu Xian, what are you doing?" Yi Qingluo clenched her teeth as she really wanted to slap this lunatic to death. Zhu Wuxin brushed her hair aside. His vision was fixed on Yi Qingluo's exposed neck. That pair of eyes that were as cold as ice instantly squinted, reflecting the piercingly cold light of a sharp blade. You slept with him last night. Zhu Wuxin's ice-cold voice was deep and cold. His stiff fingers, one by one, loosened Yiqing Luo's hair. Following that, one by one, they loosened their grip on Yiqing Luo. The minute Yiqing Luo broke free from the restraints, she immediately took a few steps back. While frowning, she massaged the place where she was scratched and sneered coldly. What are you doing so early in the morning? There are hickeys on your neck. Zhu Wuxian's gaze was icy cold as his vision seemed to pass through Yiqing Luo, directly penetrating her neck which was below her fine black hair. 2. Hickey. Yiqing Luo immediately raised her hand and covered her neck. Recalling Zhu Wuxian's action earlier, surely it couldn't be just to see the hickeys on her neck, right? Emotion. That shameless man. No wonder he sat in the room so calmly and didn't come out. So he was planning to use the kiss mark to force Zhu Wuxin to retreat. You slept with him last night. Zhu Wuxian's expression was gloomy and between his brows, there was a chilly intent. Chapter 3141. Yiqing Luo. Zhu Wuxian's voice suddenly became heavier. Both his hands suddenly placed on Yiqing Luo's shoulders. Answer me, isn't it? His tone was still icy cold, but it was filled with questions. This attitude made Yiqing Luo's brows creased even tighter. Her pink lips were tightly pursed as her face surfaced some anger. She glanced sideways at the hand on her shoulder. Following that, she raised her hand and patted the hand on her shoulder. Zhu Wuxian, what answer do you want to hear from me? She looked at Zhu Wuxian calmly. Xian is my fiancé, my man. Even if something happened between me and him, that is something that should be expected. Zhu Wuxian's expression instantly sunk as he raised his hand to grab her. Don't say things that will make me angry, you are? Zhu Wuxian, Xiaoyi said something earlier which is very right. Yiqing Luo interrupted Zhu Wuxian's words as she took a step back to avoid his touch. Don't deceive yourself and others. Living in an unrealistic fantasy. This is the last time I'm saying this to you. I don't belong to you, not in the past, not now and not in the future. Her voice could be said to be extremely indifferent. And it was stern and firm, without any room for resistance. Zhu Wuxian's hand froze in midair. He clenched his fists tightly. All the muscles in his body were tensed up at this moment. His expression was like frost, so cold that it could cut through one's bones. That pair of icy cold eyes seemed to be filled with ice shards. The vortex in his eyes kept on surging wildly. There seemed to be a voice clamoring in his heart. They were clamoring for him to destroy all of it. To destroy everyone Yiqing Luo relied on, everything, every place. After that, to imprison Yiqing Luo by his side, to accompany him for eternity. That thought kept on surging in his mind. Like a raging wave, it kept on surging. Zhu Wuxian's current gaze was so strange and terrifying that even Yiqing Luo couldn't help but feel a chill down her spine. His eyes were so cold that they seemed to be able to cause her heart to stop beating. The powerful and shocking aura was accompanied by an intense murderous intent. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted violently. A strong sense of unease spread from the bottom of his heart. She also released her perception on her own. His body also assumed a defensive posture. This action also stung Zhu Wuxin's eyes. The murderous aura in his eyes became even more violent and ferocious. She was actually afraid of him? She actually isolated him outside. She was actually guarding against him. Miss Yi. Dizun. Are you awake? Just as you expected. The reinforcements are all heavily injured. Those bastards from the Palace of Darkness are too despicable. Suddenly, a deep, resounding, and urgent roar came from outside the inn. The general and a few soldiers rushed in with big strides. Yiqing Luo's gaze went past Zhu Wuxian. As it floated downwards to the main hall, the soldiers supported many of the heavily injured soldiers into the inn. The hall was instantly filled with the smell of blood. Yiqing Luo frowned as she didn't have the mood to continue tangling with Zhu Wuxian. She retracted her gaze, and was just about to speak to Zhu Wuxian. But Zhu Wuxian only used that pair of extremely indifferent, and filled with endless whirlpools as he fixed his gaze on her. Just one look. Zhu Wuxian's figure seemed to have blended into the air as he disappeared. Chapter 3142. She called out Zhu Wu Xian's name as she sensed her surroundings. But there was no response to her. There was only a cool breeze blowing gently. She didn't sense Zhu Wu Xian's presence. He wouldn't. Had he really left the inn? The human face was still hidden in his arm. If the human face took the opportunity to leave his arm, it would be extremely difficult for them to find that piece of human face again. But Yi Qingluo didn't have the time to look for Zhu Wu Xian. In the main hall, more and more injured soldiers and disciples dressed in the imperial palace's uniform were supported in. Yi Qingluo could only put Zhu Wu Xian's matter aside, although Zhu Wu Xian's character was a little cold. But he wasn't someone who didn't know how to look at the bigger picture. Unless the thoughts had just surfaced in her mind. Behind her, there was a warm and thick chest wall. The man's hand hooked onto her waist. He gently lifted her up. Her body, along with this force, fell directly into the main hall. The Grand General immediately went up to them. "Overlord Miss Yi, I'm so sorry to disturb your rest so early in the morning. But these brothers can't wait." Yi Qingluo's vision swept past the injured people in the main hall as she asked in a deep voice, "What's going on?" "Yesterday, we requested for reinforcements." The soldiers stationed in the other strongholds in South Tide Continent received the emergency signal, and while they were rushing over in batches, they were ambushed by the monsters. The Grand General clenched his fists tightly. Yesterday that batch of Palace of Darkness's disciples and the monsters were simply a cover. They were simply trying to attract our attention, then taking the opportunity to attack the other strongholds. As he said that, he hugged his head in extreme frustration as he clenched his fists tightly and pounded his own head fiercely. "I shouldn't have sent out the emergency signal. I shouldn't have let them rush over to help. It's all my fault, to let them fall into such a dangerous situation." "Grand General, it's not your fault. It's Palace of Darkness. Palace of Darkness is simply too despicable and shameless." The other soldiers immediately rushed up to stop the Grand General. The Grand General's muscles tightened as he looked at Dmo Xian and Yi Qingluo with reddened eyes. "Overlord. Miss Yi, I beg you. You must save these brothers." Yesterday Xiang Shengfa's attack on Valley Wind City with the undead corpse puppets, the flying demonic beasts, and the disciples of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness were all just a pretense? His true goal, it was actually other fortresses. After they finished dealing with Elephant Shengfa and the others, before the reinforcements arrived, Yi Qingluo had indeed guessed it before. The reinforcements were on the way, but they were blocked by other teams from the Palace of Darkness, which delayed them. But he never thought that Xiang Shengfa was not the main attacker. She thought that she had successfully repelled the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and protected the Three Valley Wind City. In fact, it was just a bad plan of the Dark Palace. This knowledge made Yi Qingluo's expression sunk instantly. She glanced sideways and exchanged glances with the man beside her. She pursed her lips. "Xian, if this move of the Palace of Darkness is really a plan, then the Palace of Darkness is indeed an opponent that cannot be underestimated." Dmo Xian hugged her waist tightly as he comforted her and squeezed. "But this move of the Palace of Darkness also means that the Palace of Darkness is already unable to hold back and wants to quickly invade the South Continent. As for why they want to increase the speed and use such a risky method, there is a possibility that something has happened internally in the Palace of Darkness." Chapter 3143. Right. Secluded Palace was in such a hurry to invade the South Continent. It must be because something had happened within the Secluded Palace. Otherwise, Secluded Palace would absolutely not waste a huge amount of manpower and resources at this critical juncture to hasten the speed of invading. The Elephant Saint technique would appear at the Valley Wind City's gates, which meant that the people from Secluded Palace knew that she and Dmo Xian had come to the South Continent, which also meant that the people from Secluded Palace had no time to care about their existence. Secluded Palace only wanted to reach their own goal as soon as possible. As long as they invaded the other strongholds in the South Continent, then the last Valley Wind City, even with Yi Qingluo and the others around, Secluded Palace had the absolute confidence to take it down? Save them first. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists as she suppressed the guesses in her heart and started to help the injured soldiers to treat their wounds. It could be said that Secluded Palace's plan this time was extremely ruthless. There were at least 300 to 400 soldiers who died under the sneak attack. Even the Imperial Palace's disciples had died over 10 people. Those who were seriously injured and rushed to Valley Wind City added up to about 100 people. Moreover, their injuries were extremely serious. It could be seen that these soldiers had all escaped from a life-and-death situation. Indeed, once the corpse puppets made their move, these soldiers were not a match for the undead corpse puppets at all. Miss Yi, those monsters are very sinister. Not only are they impenetrable, water and fire resistant, we have no way to resist. The most important thing is, if we are scratched by those monsters on our bodies will also undergo changes. The Grand General's voice was cold and hard as his eyes turned red as he stared at his brothers in the main hall. His voice was trembling. Those wounds, some of them will cause our brothers to turn into rotting corpses. Right in front of us, they will start to corrode slowly from the wounds. And some of them will have a huge change in temperament. They will start to attack us. It's like they have become one with those monsters. But their battle power is much lower than those monsters. When the Grand General said this, his voice was already choking. Miss Yi, you and your mercenary brothers can deal with that bunch of monsters, so you will definitely be able to save them, right? Today, the great general could only place his hopes on Yiqing Luo. She was his group of brothers who had gone through life and death together for so many years, their only hope. After listening to the great general's words, Yiqing Luo's expression turned even more grave. That group of monsters are known as corpse puppets, and they are battle-type puppets which are refined from dead corpses using a sinister secret method. Therefore, the bodies of the puppets were filled with evil miasma. This miasma can be transmitted into a person's body through a wound, and from there, it can corrode the body. She thought. The evil miasma required at least a semi-finished corpse puppet to have such a function. Unexpectedly, these defective products could actually use miasma to affect humans. However, she was able to deal with the undead corpse puppets because she had Yoin's mental power. However, the method to purify the miasma in their bodies, she didn't know what to do. Looking at the pleading eyes of the great general, as well as the expectant gazes of the soldiers, Yiqing Luo couldn't say anything to destroy their hopes. She pursed her pink lips and tried to think of a way to purify the miasma in her mind. She wanted to calm everyone down first, just as he was about to speak. Chapter 31:44. The moment this voice was heard, immediately, the entire inn fell into a strange silence. All the soldiers' gazes were directed towards Dmo Xian. Their eyes were filled with reverence. Even those soldiers who were covered in blood and riddled with scars propped themselves up and looked towards Dmo Xian. Regarding the Overlord's prestige, they had all heard of it. The rumored Overlord, to them, was a godlike existence. To be able to see the Overlord's face with their own eyes, this was something that they didn't even dare to think about. Reverent and admiring gazes were all gathered on Dmo Xian. But towards these reverent gazes, Dmo Xian was already used to it as he wasn't moved at all. He gently raised his palm and gently placed it on Yiqing Luo's slender shoulder as his tone was gentle and filled with pampering. Lil Luo, or the defective corpse puppets have not been processed and the evil miasma on them is extremely dense. Don't try to purify it easily as it will affect you. Miasma? Yiqing Luo wasn't unfamiliar with this term. She instantly understood the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. The last time at the Miao tribe, she had seen the effect of the corpse puppets on the Miao tribe's guards. She was also clear that the remnant yin qi on the corpse puppets would corrode into the human body and infect them. She had not expected the defective corpse puppets to have such great destructive power. No wonder the secluded palace could make use of these batch after batch of defective products to start a war without any fear. The corpse puppets were impenetrable, impervious to fire and water. It itself was an existence that defied the heavens. Using the corpse puppets as weapons, even if it was a cultivator, They would be helpless against the corpse puppets, and could only passively take a beating. Not to mention, after being injured by the corpse puppets, they would also be corroded by the corpse puppets' miasma. In this way, battling against the corpse puppets, not only were they unable to hit the corpse puppets, they had to try their best to ensure that they could not be touched by the corpse puppets. To these generals and soldiers, it was like this. It was indeed something that was impossible to achieve. They were able to escape from the hands of the corpse puppets to Valley Wind City, which was already considered incredible. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips and looked up at the man beside her. I'll leave it to you. I'll go talk to Bei Yuan and see if we can refine more weapons as soon as possible. Dmo Xian ruffled her hair. Yi Qing Luo took a look at Tang Beiyuan's direction. Tang Beiyuan nodded slightly before turning around and walking into the room she had rested in the night before. Yi Qing Luo took a step forward. Just as he reached the stairs, suddenly, a weak voice came from behind. Thank you, Madam D. Yi Qing Luo's footsteps halted. Empress, Madam Emperor. The way Lin Mingya addressed Lin Mingya made her cheeks flush. One of them thanked him. Very quickly, the other soldiers all propped up their injured bodies as they respectfully thanked Yi Qing Luo. Thank you, Imperial Madam. Thank you, Overlord, for saving us. Although today was the first time these soldiers had seen Dmo Xian and Yi Qing Luo, but they were all very clear. As long as Di Zun was willing to help them, the injuries caused by the undead corpse puppets would definitely be healed. And the reason why Di Zun was willing to help, just because of Yi Qing Luo, because of Di Zun's wife. Yi Qing Luo looked at those soldiers behind her. The soldiers' eyes were filled with sincerity. After being infected by the undead corpse puppets, they could still hold on till here, and there were no signs of them going berserk. Chapter 3145. As long as one's heart had no evil thoughts, no darkness, the corpse puppet's miasma would not be able to corrode one's heart. That way, he wouldn't be assimilated by the undead corpse puppets and become the undead corpse puppet's puppet. But the longer the miasma stayed in the body, even if they were not assimilated by the corpse puppets, they would be affected by the miasma and turn into a rotten corpse. The most important thing now was to purify the miasma in these soldiers' bodies. Yi Qing Luo smiled at them. Have a good rest. After your bodies have recovered, there's a big battle waiting for you. Yes, Imperial Madam. The soldiers cupped their fists as they replied in unison. Yi Qing Luo left the soldiers in the main hall to Dmo Xian to settle. She followed closely behind Tang Beiyuan as they walked into the room. Just as she closed the door, she heard Tang Beiyuan's chuckle. Imperial Madam. This title is indeed more suitable than the Imperial Palace's mistress. Yi Qing Luo coughed lightly. Stop teasing me. Let's talk about proper matters. Tang Beiyuan nodded. I know what you want to ask, but refining weapons, and under the circumstances where there's no conditions, refining more weapons is very difficult. Tang Beiyuan didn't beat around the bush. In 3 days, we've refined 48 weapons, and that's already the limit. That's because we're in the Imperial Palace's armament refining hall, and we don't lack any armament refining equipment. But we're in the South Continent now. Yi Qing Luo's expression turned grave. I understand what you mean. No matter if it was refining weapons or pills, other than the refining techniques, the external conditions were also very important. For example, the refining location, refining materials, etc. In a place like South Continent, the refining location wasn't considered good and the equipment wasn't complete. Even if Tang Beiyuan could refine weapons, she wouldn't be able to achieve the same efficiency and quality of weapons as when she was in the Imperial Palace. As an armament master, she would absolutely not allow herself to refine any flawed weapons, especially for an armament sect, great armament master like Tang Beiyuan. Towards her own work, she would be even more meticulous. Moreover, Secluded Palace was obviously speeding up their invasion of the South Continent. It was absolutely impossible to give them more time to refine weapons. The Dark Palace will definitely continue to send corpse puppets to attack Valley Wind City. Yi Qing Luo sighed softly. If I can refine a weapon that is able to contend against most of the dead corpses. Her hand lightly stroked the pattern imprinted on the azure dew bracelet on her wrist. In his heart he sighed. If Old Man Song was here, he would definitely be able to give her a good idea. Most of them. Tang Beiyuan murmured what Yi Qing Luo said earlier, and suddenly her eyes lit up as she clapped her hands. Why didn't I think of that? You have a weapon that can fight against most undead puppets. Yi Qing Luo was stunned. Me? Tang Beiyuan put her hand on her shoulder excitedly. The glowing fan. Your gourd flame fan was refined from your heart's blood and bones. This gourd flame fan also contains your power. As long as you extract a portion of the mental energy used to fight against the undead puppets and fuse it with the ghastly flame fan, your ghastly flame fan will be much stronger than the weapons we forged in the Imperial Palace. To refine an excellent weapon, and then fuse it with the Serene Yin's mental energy, it required a lot of time. Chapter 3146. Of course, if it was an ordinary weapon, he could only start from the beginning of the refinement, step by step, to extract the Nether-Een spiritual energy, and fuse it with the Nether-Een spiritual energy. But, the devouring flame fan was different. The glower flame fan was not only refined from Yi Qing Luo's heartbone and blood. The ghastly flame fan was also a weapon that could grow in quality. It was a spiritual power that could completely fuse with the Netherworld Palace. In this way, Yi Qing Luo would be able to use the glower flame fan to go against most of the undead puppets. Yi Qing Luo muttered to herself for a moment and made up her mind. Alright, then I'll have to trouble you to think of a way to merge the Serene Yin's mental power into the glower flame fan. Tang Beiyuan received the glower flame fan from Yi Qing Luo. I'll get it done now. As she spoke, she took out some equipment from her spatial ring. Tang Beiyuan was fiddling with the equipment when she suddenly thought of something as she abruptly raised her head and looked at Yi Qing Luo. That's right, Qing Luo. That smear of mental energy which had fused with the weapon. You really have no way to extract more? If the amount extracted is too little, it will be less effective against the undead puppets. For a weapon like the gourd flame fan that can grow, if I can extract a large amount of Nether-Een mental energy and fuse it with it, the effect will definitely double. Yi Qing Luo's finger on her wrist stiffened slightly. She lowered her eyes and fixed her gaze on the azure dew bracelet. This was what Tang Beiyuan had said. She had thought about it a long time ago. However, control over the azure dew bracelet. Until now, she still couldn't move freely. She still did not sense Old Man Song's existence. If Old Man Song was here, then Tang Beiyuan's idea would work. Temporarily, I still can't find a way to extract a large amount of mental power. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. Let me think of a way to try. He walked out of Tang Beiyuan's room. Yi Qing Luo then walked towards the direction of the room which she stayed in last night. In the main hall, Mo Xian was releasing his profound energy to help the soldiers purify the miasma within their bodies. The entire hall was silent. Yi Qing Luo didn't make any noise to disturb him as she quietly returned to her room and quietly closed the door. She sat down on the bed. He slowly raised his wrist. On her fair and slender wrist, the circular pattern resembling the petals of a cherry blossom was clearly visible. Vaguely, there seemed to be a bright red light flowing between the patterns. Staring. Yi Qing Luo's gaze suddenly went into a daze. There seemed to be a wisp of white smoke floating in front of her, looking at her with a benevolent smile. That dignified yet concerned voice reverberated in her ears. Little Luo. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as the tip of her nose suddenly turned sour. She unconsciously looked in the direction of the white smoke and extended her other hand. Her voice was choked with emotion. Old Man Song. Old Man Song. However, her sobbing voice came to an abrupt halt at this moment. She stretched out her hand, but missed. The white smoke in front of him turned into a gentle breeze and dissipated. Old Song. Yi Qing Luo cried out again. He raised his hands and tried desperately to touch the space in front of him. However, the only thing his hands could touch was air. She froze on the spot. He stared blankly for a long time before coming back to his senses. Am I hallucinating again? Yes. If it wasn't a hallucination, how could Old Man Song's spiritual body dissipate with just a touch? Yiqing Luo's tensed-up emotions, at this instance, were all unloaded. She really missed Old Man Song. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.